This is the land of Ebelstein. The people who live in the Ebelstein slums call this shabby old man the lying old geezer. The old man has this shameless pride burning in his eyes, and he can only use one-star magic, but he goes around telling everyone he is a great mage. On top of all that, the guy has a really nasty temper. His temper is so bad that he actually loses it at little kids who try to prank him. The old geezer shuffles through the slums and grumbles at anyone who crosses his path. Our boy looks calm as he reveals that he learned magic from this same old man. Derek points out that there is no big reason behind it. The old man just needs followers, and Derek just needs knowledge. A lone dead tree stands under the open sky with its bare branches reaching up toward nothing. Derek and the old man walk together through the open countryside. The old man's eyes go wide because he realizes Derek already has a grasp on the flow of mana. He begins to wonder if maybe this kid could actually be something special. Derek's eyes begin to glow with strong focus as mana starts swirling around his body. The mana wraps around the young man's whole body in a big surge of raw energy. The burst of mana grows so powerful that it explodes outward, and it goes way beyond what any beginner should be able to produce. The force of the blast swallows everything in a blinding flash of light. The old man stumbles backward and gets knocked completely off balance by the impact. Derek spends a full year at the old man's side and runs every kind of errand you can think of. By the end of it, he becomes a one-star mage. Derek mentions that he has heard something about the area near the northern wall of Ebelstein. The old man tells him that some noble brats manage to break through stars even before their coming-of-age ceremony. He warns Derek that a lowborn like him could spend his whole life chasing that realm and still barely reach it. He tells our boy not to get cocky about his progress. The old man tells Derek not to live alone. He adds that if he gathers some followers and uses his skills well, it might push him toward the wall of 2-star. He keeps saying that magic is all about bloodlines. He says that no matter how hard someone works, it always comes down to blood in the end. The young man falls silent and his expression becomes unreadable. The old man just keeps drilling the idea of invisible barriers between nobles and commoners into his head over and over. Derek begins to wonder if all the ranting is just the old man's way of mourning everything he never managed to achieve in his life. That night feels unusually long. The next day, our boy makes his way back to their place. The shock hits Derek hard. The old man is dead. His whole body is covered in bruises like someone beat him without any mercy at all. Derek figures the old man must have gotten into a fight somewhere and taken a really bad beating. Then the truth finally reaches him and a sinking feeling takes over. The old man is beaten to death by the guards. People say the old man is caught trying to steal a 2-star spellbook from a warehouse. Nobody understands why an old man with no ambition would go and do something like that. Derek's eyes fill with quiet grief as the old man's face flashes through his memory. The lying old geezer never stopped preaching about bloodlines. He went on and on about it over and over again, but our boy knows he can never have noble blood. Then a notification appears and tells him that he has unlocked the basics of magic and must choose his primary school. This is a decision that cannot be changed. Derek's gaze carries the weight of a secret that no one else knows about. He is not originally from this world, and just like that 4 years pass by. This is Katia Flameheart. She is the former mistress of the now fallen House Flameheart, which was once a Viscounty. Katia is born a noble and she is a 3-star mage. A lot of mercenary groups seek her out because of her abilities. Katia carries herself with quiet authority among the mercenaries. She takes contracts in Ebelstein through the Belden mercenary group and begins teaching Derek. Our boy joins the Leon Kingdom and goes around using only his 1-star magic. Along the way, he learns a great deal from Katia, who is a 3-star mage. They are at a tavern called Belden's Tier. Katia gives Derek a sharp look and tells him that it is only natural for a mage to develop a sense for business. She adds that Derek has that kind of talent in particular. Katia goes on and says that steady practice is the only path that will let him keep progressing from here. The young man nods and tells her he will keep that in mind. Katia's voice drops to a calm tone, and she tells Derek to close his eyes and feel his mana. She tells him to calmly sense where his mana is generated and what kind of flow it has. Katia tells him to think of it like using mana to bring whatever image he is imagining into reality. Katia's eyes fill with surprise. She realizes that Derek definitely has a big amount of innate mana, but because the guy is self-taught, his control over it is rough at best. Derek concentrates hard, and his mana suddenly surges out of control. The energy blasts outward and shakes the entire building of Beldon's tier. Everyone in the tavern starts panicking and scrambling around. One person wants to know what that sound is. Another one shouts and asks if they are under attack. Someone else tells the others to go check outside. Our boy just stands there frozen because he has no idea what he just unleashed. Derek looks around and quietly calls out for his master. Katya's tone is sharp as she walks ahead and tells Derek not to say anything and to just follow her. She explains that this is the first time he has personally received an invitation from a noble. She warns him to act with care because even the wait time is part of how they evaluate you. The young man follows Katya through a grand corridor without saying a word. Derek's expression shifts and he murmurs to his master, asking what is going on. Katya stops and tells him to listen carefully to what she is about to say. Derek nods and quietly tells her he understands. Katya's voice takes on a serious weight. She reminds him that nobles are generally born with privileges and that magic is the greatest privilege among all of them. Katya continues and explains that people treat innate strength like a blessing, but that only applies to nobles. She adds that among commoners it is extremely rare for someone to reach 3 stars. The ones who do manage it are usually discovered and recruited even further into the world of magic. Katya's eyes narrow as she reveals the truth to him. She tells Derek that what he just used is a 2-star delusion-type spell called Labyrinth Hallucination. Derek thinks back and realizes this is how he becomes a 2-star mage at just 14 years old. A notification confirms that he has obtained Labyrinth Hallucination, which is a 2-star magic. After that, Katya travels with Derek and passes down all kinds of spells to him. She even teaches him about the high society she belonged to back when she was still a noble. A year passes like that, and then Katya leaves. The young man's face fills with a mix of gratitude and loss. Derek learns that the County of Elvester appoints Katya as a private tutor. House Elvester is the kind of family that even the capital's Grand Duke has to show respect to because they have Count Elvester on their side. For Katya, it is an offer she cannot refuse. Becoming the magic teacher of a noble at that level is something most people can only dream about. Our boy's gaze softens with gratitude and loss. Being the magic teacher of a noble at that level is a huge blessing for anyone. Katya leaves after giving him a 2-star spellbook as a gift. Derek's list of acquired magic keeps growing and now shows several spells including Fireball and Delusion Magic and Labyrinth Hallucination among others. Another year passes after that. Derek's eyes fill with determination as he pushes himself further. He self-studies and manages to master 2 more 2-star spells on his own. He reaches this milestone at just 16 years old, and he has no plan of stopping here. Back at the tavern known as Beldon's Tier, a bearded man slams the table in excitement. He announces that they have finally received a formal request for once. Jason's eyes go wide with excitement. The request comes from House Duplain, which is the Grand Duchy. He asks Derek if he understands what that means. Derek just stares back with a guarded expression, and he is already thinking it over. Derek asks if Jason means Duplain, and he is clearly taken aback by the name. Derek starts getting frustrated and questions why a family like that would send a request to their group. Jason cuts him off and insists that the only thing that matters right now is the opportunity in front of them. Jason explains that it is Duplain the Dark Gold family. He tells Derek to really think about it because if they open a path with Duplain through this job, it changes everything for them. Jason adds that they can build connections for next time too. The young man asks what exactly the job requires. Jason grins and says it is nothing crazy. They just want them to handle a few monsters on the outer edges of the duchy's territory. Derek responds flatly and asks if that is really all there is to it. Jason insists that of course it is because nobles would never go back on their word. Derek clicks his tongue and says something feels off about the whole thing. He points out that a family as powerful as Duplain hiring a mercenary corps just to clear out low-level monsters makes no sense at all. He says he is not doing it and tells Jason to get someone else. Jason calls after him in a panic and begs our boy to wait just 1 second. Derek walks away and his eyes are cold with resolve. He tells Jason to just call someone else for the job. The guy reminds Jason that he does not take shady jobs. Jason fires back that if he could send someone else, he would have done it himself already. He insists that they specifically requested a mage. Jason presses on and asks if Derek knows how scarce mages are among mercenaries these days. He says that Derek is the only one who can do it, and that is exactly why he called him. Derek gets irritated and snaps back. He wants to know why they would need a mage just to deal with a few monsters. He says he does not want to get involved in anything that turns out to be unnecessarily complicated. Jason reaches into his pocket and pulls something out. He shouts for Derek to wait and holds up a single gold coin. Jason announces that this is not even the full fee but just an advance payment, and he waves the coin in front of Derek. Two figures come into view. There is a well-dressed man with a thick mustache and a woman beside him. Both of them carry the unmistakable air of nobility. Jason tells Derek to pay his respects because these are his clients, but the man immediately objects and refuses outright. The noble wants to know why they are sending a child who has not even had his coming-of-age ceremony. He says he expected mages to be dispatched, not children. Jason stammers and insists that this kid is the real deal. Jason's voice fills with conviction as he declares that Derek is the best mage he knows. However, the noble scoffs and announces that they are leaving because this is not a task to entrust to some child. The clients begin to turn away and tension hangs in the air. Derek stands his ground, and his expression does not change at all from their dismissal. The noble pauses and glances back at Derek. A flicker of curiosity breaks through his doubt, and he asks if the young man's name is Derek. Derek looks the man dead in the eye and simply tells him they should talk. They arrive in the Grand Duchy of Duplain. Our boy does not waste any time at all. A green monster lunges forward and Derek cuts it down with a single clean strike of blue energy. The guy tears through the monsters without breaking a sweat, and his blade carves through them one after another. He slashes a creature across its chest and blood splatters across the ground. Derek's gaze locks into cold focus. Another monster charges at him with a roar, and he meets it head-on without hesitation. Our boy fights through a cluster of monsters and moves between them with speed and precision. He raises his blade and prepares for the next wave. His eyes are sharp and calm. Derek channels his mana and unleashes a blast of magic that tears through the remaining monsters in one big sweep. The young man turns to the noble and calmly announces that everything is finished. The dispatch officer lets out a stunned sigh and barely manages to say that it is done. The noble's face fills with disbelief. He mutters that Derek takes down that many in no time at all. Back at the tavern known as Beldone's Tier, a man inside the tavern confronts Derek the moment he walks in. The guy sneers and asks if Derek has become a noble's dog. The woman's face twists with anger and disgust. Someone scolds her and shouts his name, which is Pelin, and asks what she thinks he is doing with customers around. Pelin fires back that, no matter how low a commoner gets, she refuses to be a noble's dog. Pelin turns to Derek and asks how much the job pays. He wants to know if Jason tells him the number. Pelin presses harder and asks how much they offered for crawling between a noble's legs. She sneers that it is probably 2 gold coins for running errands. A smirk appears on Derek's face. He tells Pelin it is 1 gold coin. Pelin's jaw drops in pure shock. She screams that it is 1 gold coin for a single job. Pelin instantly drops to his knees and begs to be allowed to crawl between those legs too. Jason snaps at him and tells him to shut up. He says that crawling between legs is not part of the job. Jason looks curious and asks Derek how the request goes. Derek says it is nothing special. The job itself is not hard and it is over quickly. He notes that the first impressions of the clients are terrible, but they clearly have money. Then Derek pauses and adds that all 3 of the clients are lying about something. Jason looks surprised and asks if Derek is serious about that. Our boy lays out his observations one by one. The noble who commissions the task is supposed to have certain qualities, but that person has none of them. And the man who calls himself a clerk is also lying because his hands are way too clean for someone doing that kind of work. Derek continues and notes that the trainee inspector is suspicious as well. Jason's eyes narrow with concern and he quietly says Derek's name like it is a warning. Jason tells Derek that they are mercenaries and that they do not need to dig too deep into their clients. He says they just do the job and take the money, and that is all there is to it. The young man falls quiet for a moment and then agrees. Derek thinks to himself that Jason is right. This place is the wild, and in the wild the only thing that matters is making a living. Everything else does not matter. The next day at the Grand Duchy of Duplain, the work is taken care of. An older man with a fine mustache commends the results and says this should last for quite a while. He tells Derek the work is good and that there is actually something more he wants to discuss. The older man's tone shifts as he begins to bring up something new. A golden gleam flashes in the air. The older man holds up a glinting object and calls out to Derek. It looks like some kind of old coin. Derek's voice is steady but cautious, and he suggests they put that down and talk first. The older man clears his throat and agrees. The older man tells Derek that he values his skills a lot. He explains that Derek's abilities have made a real difference, and it is almost like working with a completely different mercenary group. Derek blinks because he is caught off guard and asks what the man means by that. The older man delivers the offer. For this request, the Grand Duchy will pay 15 gold coins. Derek's composure cracks for just a second. He blurts out and asks if he just hears 15 coins. Then Derek steadies himself and agrees to take the job. The sound of a carriage echoes down a quiet road as Derek and Jason travel toward the Duplain estate. They arrive at the Duplain residence, which is a grand building that towers over everything around it. Jason gapes at the sight and says that this is where Grand Duke Duplain lives. Before they enter, Derek pauses. He states firmly that he is not like cheap mercenaries and requests that no one lie to him or try to cut corners. A composed older man steps forward and introduces himself as Dylan, who is a retainer to Grand Duke Hainel Drake Duplain. He welcomes them in. Dylan continues talking and outlines the details of their arrival in a practiced and calm manner. Jason hesitates and starts stammering because he is clearly flustered about something. He wonders aloud what they should do. A woman in a crisp maid uniform steps forward with confidence. She announces herself as Katerina, who is the Grand Duke's head maid. Katerina glances at Jason and makes a remark about his rough appearance. Jason fires back that his manners are perfectly fine and introduces himself as the captain of the Beldon Mercenary Corps. They start going over the details of the arrangement. Questions come up about the dispatch setup and the type of staff involved and the working conditions of the contract. Derek's expression grows tense as the terms of the job become clearer. Something about this arrangement does not sit right with him. Derek pauses and asks who exactly the person they are supposed to work with is. Just then someone new arrives and long dark hair sweeps into view. The air shifts as the newcomer steps forward, and her presence is impossible to ignore. A young woman with flowing dark hair and striking red eyes stands before them. She introduces herself as Aiseline Eleanor Duplain. She announces that she wants to appoint Derek as the magic tutor for her younger sister Diella. This is Aiseline Eleanor Duplain, who is the eldest daughter of House Duplain. Shock spreads across our boy's face as the weight of the request hits him. Being a magic tutor for a noble lady is something he never expects to hear. This is the Grand Duchy of Duplain at the Duplain residence. The doors burst open with a loud crash as someone storms into the hall. Raig's face is twisted with frustration, and he calls out to his father and Valerian. He demands that they take a look at what is happening. The Grand Duke shoots Raig a cold look and asks what he thinks he is doing. He orders him to conduct himself with dignity. Raig fires back and says the one who needs to act with dignity is not him but Diella. He insists that she has gone too far and is now kicking maids around and causing a mess everywhere. Valerian's voice drops low and he warns Raig to lower his voice. He reminds him that this is not the place for that kind of conversation. Raig presses on and points out that more than 10 maids have quit just last month alone. The tension in the room spikes as energy crackles between father and son. Valerian's voice breaks with anger and he demands to know how long his father plans to keep turning a blind eye to that child. He slams his hand down and roars Raig's name. The whole room goes silent. He orders Raig to stop and leave at once. Raig does not back down though. He tells his father that even if Diella is a good-for-nothing, they still have Aiseline. His eyes harden and he declares that it is time they let Diella go. The Grand Duke tells him flatly that this is not for him to decide. Raig reveals that he has already had the Grand Steward look into a monastery. He says the facilities are good and that placing Diella there would be better for everyone involved. Before Raig can finish his sentence, a violent slash of energy tears through the air between them. The Grand Duke's presence fills the room completely. He states that he has already told Raig this is not his decision to make. He speaks Raig's name in a voice that is cold enough to freeze the air around them. Raig tells his father that when the time comes to make a decision, it must be made. Derek asks Aiseline if she has ever heard about her younger sister Diella. Aiseline responds and says she has seen Lady Diella listed in the Duplain family registry. Aiseline's expression carries a trace of sadness. She confirms that is correct and adds that Diela is probably not well known to the public. Just then a voice calls out in surprise and stammers the name Valerian. Valerian turns and greets Aislinn warmly. He tells her it has been a while and asks how her experience in Ebelstein has been. Aislinn smiles politely and says that thanks to his care she has been living comfortably. Valerian nods and mentions that Rag seems a bit worked up. He suggests they catch up later. Aislinn agrees and says she understands. Derek's red eyes flicker with quiet thought as he watches Valerian leave. The Grand Duke tells Aislinn that he is relieved to hear she has been doing well in Ebelstein. Aislinn responds warmly and says it is all thanks to him. She addresses him as father. Aislinn introduces the magic tutor she has brought from Ebelstein and explains that he has agreed to take charge of Diela. The Grand Duke glances at Derek and lets out a brief hum. Aislinn tells her father that she imagines he is busy and that they will take their leave now. However, the Grand Duke stops them. He tells Derek to stay behind. The young man remains still as the room empties around him and the Grand Duke studies him in silence. The Grand Duke reads a document and remarks that Derek is quite young. His gaze sharpens and he asks Derek if he is really 16. Derek answers simply and says yes he is. The Grand Duke asks if the young man can handle magic to some extent. Our boy keeps his expression perfectly neutral and replies that he can use a bit of one-star magic. The Grand Duke's eyes narrow slightly as he processes the answer. Then a low chuckle escapes the Grand Duke's lips. He tells Derek plainly that he has no reason to lie. He adds that humility does not always come off as a sign of virtue. Derek says nothing and holds his ground. A beat of silence hangs between them. The guy addresses the Grand Duke by his title, and his voice is steady but careful. He apologizes if he comes off as disrespectful. The Grand Duke waves it off and says it is fine. He tells Derek that he understands why he carries himself the way he does, and adds that being too talented can end up eating away at a person. He looks Derek over and remarks that judging by his age and attire, he does not look like a nobleman or a scholar or a magic tutor. Derek meets the Grand Duke's gaze without flinching and states simply that he is a mercenary. The Grand Duke tells Derek that since Aislinn has chosen him, he will not pry any further. He grants Derek entry to the annex of the Duplain lands. He instructs that a maid will guide him and tells Derek he may go. Our boy explains that he is a mercenary and that when he takes a commission, he sees it through to the end. He states that Aislinn has commissioned him so that Lady Diela may learn magic and enter high society as a proper noble. The Grand Duke asks why Derek is spelling out the obvious. The young man's voice carries a quiet weight as he replies. He tells the Grand Duke that he has an earnest request to make of him. Just then a crash echoes through the halls as something shatters in the distance and a maid screams nearby. Terrified voices stammer out apologies, and the maids beg forgiveness as they scramble to get away from Diela's quarters. Diela's voice rings through the corridor, and she screams at the maids to get out of her sight. She threatens to throw them from the tower if they show their faces again. Elsewhere, a voice asks why Derek of all people is chosen for this. The speaker notes that magic tutors are usually scholars and not street mercenaries. The voice adds that finding a proper tutor should not be difficult at all. The speaker's tone fills with concern as they note that a commoner will have difficulty managing as a noble's magic tutor. Aislinn explains that she has tried almost every famous mage on the entire continent. In the end, they all give up on Diela. She continues and says that she begins looking for those who can use magic but are in desperate enough circumstances to not walk away easily. She admits that finding a mercenary is unexpected. Aislinn notes that Derek seems to know a lot about high society and is remarkably perceptive. She explains that his master was a fallen noble who lived quietly in Ebelstein and that he learned a great deal from her. The listener nods and remarks that they see now. Despite the guy being a mercenary, they figured as much and asked anyway. Aislinn confesses that she thinks if it is Derek, he might simply be able to keep Diela in line and last longer than the others. She blinks slowly because she is clearly caught off guard by that. The speaker explains that Derek is a mage who grows up on the streets and works and trains independently before he even comes of age. They ask Aislinn whether she truly thinks someone from the streets can survive on nothing but refinement and awareness alone. The young man walks through the grand corridors of the Duplain estate, and the servants flanking him barely spare him a glance. He reaches a heavy door and pauses before it. The air grows still as our boy stands before the entrance to Diela's quarters. His fingers brush the handle as the weight of what comes next begins to settle over him. A beat of silence passes as the young man gathers his composure. Derek opens the door and steps inside and offers a simple greeting. He steps inside and introduces himself. He gives his name and asks to be excused for a moment. A voice from within the room calls out and tells him to come closer. This is Diella Catherine Duplain, who is the second daughter of House Duplain. She sits in her chair with the presence of someone who owns everything in the room. Derek takes a step closer as instructed. Diella's voice drips with disgust and she says this is horrible. She declares that she thinks some sewer rat has crawled in. She asks if this is the one the Grand Steward mentioned and then changes her mind and says he really is just a sewer rat after all. Derek stands motionless as something splashes over him from above. Diella sneers and asks if the gutter water brings back memories of his hometown. She adds with a mocking smile that being drenched in dirty water suits him much better. Then she sighs that she has run out of water and calls it disappointing. The young man stands there soaking wet with his clothes dripping and his hair matted against his face. Not a single muscle in his body moves. A quiet breath escapes our boy as he absorbs the humiliation without saying a word. Water drips from his cloak onto the floor in a steady rhythm. Diella lets out a cold laugh at the sight of him. Then her expression snaps into rage and she demands to know how he dares to look directly at her. Something flies toward Derek and strikes him hard. The guy stumbles but catches himself and mutters something under his breath. Diella wrinkles her nose and declares that he stinks. Derek's jaw tightens as the whole situation sinks in. He endures it all in silence with his fists clenched at his sides. Water continues to drip from his soaked clothes as the moment stretches on. Diella straightens up and delivers her final verdict. She tells the sewer rat to know his place and scoffs at the idea of someone like him teaching her. She asks if they did not teach him common sense on the streets. Derek walks through the corridors of the Duplain estate, still dripping wet but perfectly composed. His thoughts sharpen as he considers his next move. He wants to ask the Grand Duke a very important question because the Grand Duke is the one who loves Lady Diella more than anyone else. Derek stands before the Grand Duke and asks how much authority he is willing to grant him when it comes to teaching Lady Diella. The Grand Duke's answer carries the weight of absolute trust. A massive surge of energy rips through the room as the decision is made. Diella's eyes go wide with shock and fear as something shatters around her. She sits frozen on the floor, surrounded by broken furniture, and the look on her face is nothing like the cruel girl from moments ago. Derek stands before her and his shadow stretches across the floor. His presence fills the room completely. Diella stares up at him with trembling eyes and her hand pressed against her cheek. For the first time she has nothing to say. Our boy looks down at her with one eye burning bright. He tells her two words that change everything between them. He tells her to get up. The story flashes back to 3 years ago. A young Derek rides alongside Katya on a dirt road and he calls out to his teacher with a question on his mind. He asks Katya what she would do if she had to teach a stubborn student who did not appreciate kindness at all. Katya tilts her head and says she supposes she would try to understand them and embrace them and take them in. Derek pushes back and says that sounds too idealistic. He asks what about a student who cannot be reached even that way. Katya explains that the essence of teaching is to lead a student in a better direction. She adds that if understanding and compassion do not work, then a teacher has to find a different starting point. The young man asks what she means by that. Her expression turns cold and certain as she delivers her answer. She says by carving fear into them. The title card marks the start of the present-day events. Derek stands over Diella in the present and tells her to treat others with consideration and respect. He warns her not to make him say things twice and orders her to get up. His shadow falls across Diella as she sits frozen on the floor and the air between them is thick with tension. Fury erupts across Diella's face and she screams at Derek. She demands to know how the likes of him dares to do this and shouts that he dares to lay a hand on her. Our boy does not flinch or back away at all. He tells Diella calmly that he will not repeat himself either. He states that when she deals with others, she will do so with consideration and respect. Diella's jaw drops in disbelief. Before she can respond, the Grand Steward rushes in and shouts at Derek asking what he is doing. The steward roars that a lowborn has dared to put his hands on a young lady. The steward rushes to Diella's side and asks if she is all right. He demands to know what Derek thinks he is doing and warns that if the Grand Duke finds out there will be consequences. The guy pulls out a sealed document without saying a word. He states that His Grace has granted him full authority over all of Miss Diela's education. He holds the letter up for everyone to see and explains that His Grace has permitted him to use whatever method he chooses. The steward's face drains of all color as he reads the document. He stammers that this cannot be real. Diela clings to a servant because she is still shaken from the encounter. A voice booms through the corridor as someone storms in. Others scramble to hold the newcomer back and beg Valerian to calm down. Valerian towers over Derek with fury in his eyes and demands to know if this is the mercenary. Derek stands perfectly still and says nothing. Valerian's voice cracks with rage as he demands to know how Derek dares to hit Diela. Ray grab Valerian and plead with him to put his weapon down and talk this out first. Someone tells Valerian that everything Derek does is something the Grand Duke has permitted. Ray warns Valerian that Derek is a guest Iselin personally brings in. They point out that acting this way will only hurt Iselin's position. Valerian goes quiet for a moment and then mutters that his father allowed it too. Valerian's voice takes on a cold edge and he tells Derek to come with him. He orders the others not to interfere and to go attend to their own business. Rig mentions that they heard about what happened. He notes that Diela only stops when she comes to her senses. He adds that Valerian will not go too far. Valerian leads Derek into a dusty room and tells him to come inside. He explains that this is the room Diela used when she stayed in the main building. It has been left exactly like this ever since she left. His voice softens as he reveals something unexpected. He says that Diela used to love drawing. He recalls that every time she finished a drawing, her face would light up like a flower blooming. But she never actually finished one. Valerian adds that most of the time she would leave a blank space, and especially the parts she liked the most. He pauses and apologizes for losing control earlier and tells Derek he is sorry. Our boy tells him not to worry about it and asks why Valerian brings him to this room. Valerian looks the young man in the eye and says he wants to show him something. He insists that Diela is not a child who deserves to be despised or beaten. Valerian explains that at some point Diela starts mistreating everyone around her. She has been cut off from the main house and locked away in the annex because of it. Valerian admits he cannot even guess what turns Diela into what she is now. He says they have to stop her from being sent to the monastery. If she can learn even one-star magic, then he can persuade their father somehow. His voice breaks with desperation, and he tells Derek that he is begging him to please save Diela. Our boy asks Valerian to wait a moment and turns his attention to the room. Derek studies the books scattered around the room. He notes that Diela does not completely give up on magic, judging by all the notes written in the margins. He flips through the pages carefully and reads every annotation Diela has left behind. Derek points out that these books are not just idle copies. They are full of signs of effort and resolution. Valerian confirms that there are things in them from the school, like proof of practice. The young man closes the book slowly and his decision is already made. He looks at Valerian and tells him he will give it a try. A quiet determination settles across Derek's face as the weight of his promise sinks in. Water crashes over Diela's sleeping face without any warning. Diela screams and jolts awake, soaking wet and gasping for air. Derek stands beside her bed and asks if she is seriously falling asleep right now. Diela sputters in shock and demands to know if he has lost his mind. The guy tells her to come with him for a moment and says there is somewhere they need to go. She screams at him to let go and demands to know how he dares to touch her. She calls him a complete lunatic. Derek drags Diela outside into the night and she shrieks and calls him a sick lowborn. The moonlit ground stretch out around them as the young man pulls Diela deeper into the darkness. She stumbles and screams, asking what he thinks he is doing and that this is dangerous. Diela tries to wrench free and shouts at Derek to wake up from his dream. She asks if this is how he plans to teach her. Her voice fades into panicked breathing as Derek stops walking. Our boy looks back at her with a blank expression and tells her honestly that he has no intention of teaching her magic. He says he just likes beating up stuck-up nobles. Diela can barely process what she is hearing and asks what he is saying. Derek tells her she must agree that there is no reason for someone from the bottom to like nobles. He declares that this whole tutor thing is just an excuse. Terror builds in Diela's eyes as Derek's words sink in. He explains that the tutoring is nothing more than an excuse to beat up arrogant nobles like her. Diela's voice cracks and she asks if he has any idea how bad things will get for him after this. Derek asks her with a smirk if she really thinks she will be safe after doing something like this. He tells her she is going to be shoved into a monastery soon anyway, so who would believe anything she says? He adds that if something really does happen, he can just apologize with his life because a commoner's life is worth about that much. Or he could just disappear and they would forget about him soon enough. Derek's tone turns ice cold, and he tells Diela that he would actually be doing Duplain a favor by getting rid of its headache after all. Diela's mind races as the full horror of her situation hits her. She is alone in the dark with someone who has nothing to lose. One thought screams louder than anything else in Diela's head. She is going to die here. Diela tells herself that if Derek catches her now, she will die. She realizes that cutting across the grassland toward the residence will get her caught instantly. She decides she has to shake him off in the forest because she knows the forest well and can loop back to the residence from there. A spark of defiance flashes in Diela's eyes, and she tells herself that if she makes it back, then Derek will be the one who dies instead. Diela bolts through the trees, but a blinding flash of light erupts behind her. That is a fireball. She screams that fireball is 2-star magic and demands to know how that lowborn can use it. Derek summons another fireball and hurls it through the forest. The blast tears through the trees and lights up the darkness around them. A massive blast hits the ground near Diela and sends her tumbling. She crashes down hard and she is shaking and covered in dirt. Diela lies on the ground trembling and wide-eyed. She swallows hard because she is too terrified to even scream. Our boy stands above her with both eyes burning red and a faint grin pulling at the corner of his mouth. He says he guesses he missed. Diela sprints through the trees and barely dodges a streak of blue energy that slices past her. She stumbles and crashes into the dirt. A pained groan escapes her lips as she hits the ground hard. Blue energy crackles through the air behind her as Derek closes the distance. Derek's attack tears through the forest and sends a shockwave of blue light right past Diela as she rolls out of the way. Diela barely keeps her footing as another blast lights up the darkness around her. The guy tilts his head and remarks that she is pretty quick. He adds that it is hard to believe that body belongs to someone who sits around the annex all day. Derek follows her through the forest with an almost casual stride, and blue energy dances at his fingertips. Diela's heart races as she realizes she cannot keep running like this forever. At this rate, he will definitely catch her. Derek readies another spell and blue magic circles begin forming at his hands. Diela's desperation reaches a breaking point, and mana begins to stir around her without her even realizing it. The young man notices something and his eyes sharpen. He recognizes the activation pattern from the magical research books he has studied before. He realizes that Diela is channeling mana instinctively, without any formal training or even awareness of what she is doing. The young man observes that she passes through a wall that most mages struggle with on her very first try, and without any practice at all. His eyes fill with certainty. He knows exactly what this is. Diela screams and charges straight at Derek with everything she has left. She swings at him with all her strength, and Derek blocks her attack without any effort at all. The clash of energy rings through the forest. Derek tells Diela he will admit that her spirit is admirable. He points out that she knows she cannot escape by running, so she turns around and comes back instead. He adds that choosing to fight could not have been an easy decision for her. Diela collapses to her knees and gasps for air. She does not even have the strength left to stand up. Our boy looks down at her and asks if she has any last words. Diela catches her breath and lets out a bitter laugh. She asks what he thinks she is going to do and asks if he expects her to apologize. She tells him that, unlike lowborns, she does not grovel and dares him to just kill her. Derek pauses and asks her why she is so obsessed with bloodlines. Something deep inside Diela finally cracks. Her voice breaks as she fires back and demands to know what she would have left without her bloodline. Tears begin building in Diela's eyes as the words pour out of her. She asks that if Derek takes away her single bloodline, then what would she possibly have left? The raw pain in her voice fills the silence between them. Diela screams at the top of her lungs about magic. She shouts the word over and over, and her voice cracks with every repetition. Fury and heartbreak twist together on Diela's face, and she screams at Derek, asking if he thinks she never tried. No matter how hard she tries, it still does not work. Diela's walls come crumbling down, and she reveals that she invested her name and her family's prestige and everything she had since childhood into learning magic. Her voice drops to barely a whisper, and she asks what she has left besides her bloodline. If even that is gone, then what is she? The question hangs in the cold night air. She asks herself what she even is anymore. Derek stands in silence and watches her break apart. Blue energy gathers around his blade as he raises it toward Diela. Our boy speaks in a voice stripped of all emotion and tells her that he has heard enough. He tells her goodbye without showing anything on his face. Diela's blue eyes go wide with terror as the blade points directly at her. Blue energy spirals around Derek's weapon and builds to a devastating charge. Something shifts deep inside Diela. Her teeth clench and her entire body tenses as raw survival instinct takes over. A massive pillar of blue ice erupts from the ground between Diela and Derek and shatters the air with its force. Blue crystalline energy crackles outward as ice and mana swirl around Diela's trembling body. The young man stands on the other side of the ice wall and watches calmly. Diela stares at her own hands in disbelief. She stammers the word aloud and barely manages to whisper it. She says magic. Derek's entire demeanor changes in an instant and he tells her she does good work. He calls her Lady Diela with genuine warmth in his voice. He bows his head slightly and asks her to pardon his rudeness. The guy explains that it may not be something anyone would call real magic just yet. It is only a manifestation of mana, and nothing more than that. But he tells her she still does it, and that is what matters. The weight of everything crashes down on Diela at once. She groans and then lets out a raw scream that echoes through the forest. Tears stream down Diela's face as blue mana swirls around her body. Everything she has been holding inside comes pouring out all at once. Derek explains that what she just does means she belongs to the School of the Wild. Diela asks what the School of the Wild is. Our boy tells her that most nobles learn magic through very systematic regulations. He explains that every school of magic is a system that divides how magic is channeled and manifested into different categories. He tells Diela that she belongs to the School of the Wild, and that is why trying to learn through formal regulations and rigid formulas never works for her. Our boy assures her that she is never being lazy about it. It is like she is forcing herself into clothes that do not fit her body at all. Diela's eyes go wide as the realization sinks in. She asks how Derek knows all of this. He tells her it is because he is from the School of the Wild too. He adds that he sees it in the drawings she makes because she can feel the mana flowing through nature and puts that energy directly onto the canvas. Derek explains that mages born with the temperament of the School of the Wild usually sense the mana in nature when they are young. He nods to himself and tells Diela that is enough for now. He says she should be able to walk at this point. The young man assesses her condition and notes that it is not bad at all. With this much natural talent, there is real potential here. He admits that full mastery is still a long way off, but the foundation is solid. Derek tells Diela that starting tomorrow, he will teach her how to manifest mana artificially. Diela looks up at Derek and calls him by name for the first time. She quietly thanks him for everything he does. Derek tells her it is time to go. Diela nods and says she will go with him. Her voice is small but steady. As they walk back, Derek asks about a sunset painting he sees in her old room and asks if it is her work. Diela says she does not know because it has been so long since she picks up a brush. Derek tells her it is beautifully done. Her expression softens as warmth fills her eyes for the first time. She says it is her masterpiece and adds that Derek is the first person who has ever praised it. Diela sits in her room later and she looks lighter than she has in a long time. Under the sunlight, blue mana flickers in the air around her as she tries to channel it on her own. She stares at the glow dancing between her fingers and whispers to herself, asking if this is mana. A maid appears at the door and steps inside with a tray. The maid trips and crashes to the floor with a loud noise. She lets out a scream. Liquid splashes everywhere as the tray goes flying and the maid scrambles on the ground in pure terror. The maid stammers out an apology and begs Lady Diela for forgiveness. She says she is so sorry and that it was an accident. Diela looks at the trembling maid on the floor and says only one thing. She tells her to watch where she is going. The maid stares up in complete shock because she cannot believe Diela does not hit her or scream at her. She asks herself why Diela is just leaving without yelling. Another maid rushes over and asks if the first one is okay. She tells her not to cry and notes that Lady Diella simply tells her to be careful. She wonders goes out the night before. Footsteps pound through the corridor as Diella shouts Derek's name over and over and calls for him at the top of her lungs. Derek groans and asks what she wants. A man beside him tells Lady Diella that she needs to mind her manners and that this is inappropriate behavior. Our boy sits up as Diella demands that he teach her how to handle the mana she manifests. She tells him she tries on her own but it is not working. The butler Dylan gasps and asks in disbelief if she actually manifests mana. Diella insists that Derek promises to teach her today and tells him to hurry up already. Derek tells her flatly to come back in the afternoon. Diella does not care about manners or timing at all. She storms right back and demands to be taught now. The pounding continues as the door rattles on its hinges. From behind the locked door, Derek lets out a long sigh. It is his first night of peace, and the girl is already banging his door down at sunrise. The Duplain residence stands tall under the morning sky as whispers begin spreading through the halls. Two servants huddle together in disbelief. One asks if the other has heard the news and says that Lady Diella does not break a single plate today. The other confirms it and adds that she sees Diella this morning and she does not get upset at all. The gossip deepens as another servant nervously shares the real news. She reveals that Lady Diella has actually manifested magic for real, and the others gasp and ask if she is serious. The Grand Duke sits at his desk as a servant delivers the report. He asks to confirm what he just hears and says Diella has actually manifested magic for real. Reg confirms the news to her father and tells him that the maid and the butler and the steward all report the same thing. The Grand Duke leans back with visible relief and murmurs that this is good news. He notes that manifesting magic is not something anyone can do easily. He begins to consider whether this means there is real hope for Diella after all. Reg's expression turns stiff as the room shifts its attention toward him. He argues that a single result should not be enough to erase everything. He insists that they should still consider sending Diella to the convent. Derek sits with Diella and tells her that just because she manifests magic does not mean she can already control it freely. He says he will teach her properly. The young man explains that he says this because he has been through it himself. He insists that rest is just as important as learning and that she needs to take care of herself. Diella agrees though, her enthusiasm barely holds still. Then she brings up the stuffy magic teaching and asks if there is a more exciting way. Derek grins and asks if she wants him to teach in a way that is not stuffy. Diella immediately takes it back and says to forget she asks. Derek gets serious and tells Diella that today they will practice mana manifestation. He explains that once she can freely bring about mana manifestation, she will be able to learn one-star magic before long. Our boy explains that the School of the Wild has no rigid system and that makes it ideal for self-study. It pursues far more freedom than the School of Regulations does. He pauses and admits that to be honest, Diella actually suits the School of the Wild quite well. Diella's eyes go wide with genuine surprise, and she asks if Derek is really saying she is talented. The guy confirms it but adds a warning. He tells her that having talent and being a genius are clearly different things. Diella argues that they are the same, but Derek insists they are not. He tells her that yes, she is talented, but there is still a long way between raw talent and mastery. Somewhere nearby, an unseen figure watches the lesson from a distance. A quiet click of the tongue breaks the silence as the watcher turns away. The following day, Diella runs up to the young man again and holds something in her hands. She tells him to look because she tries making something with cold ice and a piece of it actually forms. Another day passes and Diella finds Derek and tells him she can feel the mana flowing, but the sensation keeps slipping away from her. Yet another day passes and Diella calls out Derek's name and asks what he is doing all the way out here. Derek tells Diella firmly that he already warns her to stay near the annex. He asks if she thinks the Grand Duke lends her those spell books so she can slack off. Diella fires back that he lends them to her exactly for that purpose. She adds that she manifests mana earlier but the shape does not hold and asks Derek to hurry up and check it. Our boy sighs and walks with Diella back toward the estate. Her energy bounces off every surface around them. Later, Derek arrives at a room where someone waits for him. A voice asks if he is called for and tells him to take a seat because they should talk. The speaker asks Derek how Diella has been doing lately. Derek reports that Diella makes quite a bit of progress, but he adds that learning one-star magic will likely take a bit more time. Valerian hums quietly and says he understands. He then warns Derek that he mother, along with many social gatherings, will probably return to the estate sometime next week. Valerian sharpens as she tells Derek to take this seriously. He says his mother is not someone he can take lightly. He explains that the people in this estate are fine with Derek, but nobles by nature do not like commoners holding key positions, and she asks if he understands that. The young man tells him he will keep that in mind and asks if that is why he calls him here. Valerian pauses and then tells Derek something personal. He says he is the next head of House Duplan, and that means he holds a position where she must embrace and care for every single member of the house. To do that, he must be sincere with all of them. Valerian admits that this is really difficult. He says a person's heart can be so deep that it feels impossible to reach everyone. Derek cuts in and asks what exactly he is trying to say. Valerian drops all pretense and tells him the truth. Yahello will not play with him. His eyes soften as he recalls the past. He says she still vividly remembers how Yahello greets him with a smile when they are little. He asks where anyone would find another bond like that in a place like the main house. Valerian turns to Derek and asks if there is some kind of way to win Yahello's favor. The guy asks why he is bringing this question to him of all people. He answers without missing a single beat and says it is because Derek is the only one Yahello follows around. As if on cue, Yahello's voice rings through the hallway and she shouts for Derek, demanding to know where he goes. Valerian appears next to Derek holding something in his hands. He tells Derek to wait and look at this first. He explains that he learns how to make dolls from the maids and proudly holds one up. He asks what Derek thinks and if it looks exactly like Yahello. Derek stares at the thing in Valerian's hands and flatly asks if he is trying to curse someone. Valerian deflates completely and hangs his head. He tells Derek that he is utterly useless when it comes to this sort of thing. A new figure steps into view, and a composed voice announces that she has heard a great deal about Derek. The speaker says the estate has found a very capable magic teacher. The woman smiles with practiced elegance and greets Derek warmly. She introduces herself as Miriella de Belle Duplain and tells Derek that if it would not be an inconvenience, she would like to send him a gift from her territory. Our boy meets her gaze without hesitation and tells her plainly that he is not affiliated with any house. Miriella blinks in surprise and asks what he means by that. His expression does not waver as he delivers the answer that changes everything. He tells her he is a commoner. Miriella's composure cracks for the first time, and she stammers in disbelief, repeating the word back at him. 1 week earlier, Aslan's face carries a warm confidence as she tells Derek that she is glad they brought him to the Grand Duke's residence. She explains that as Yahello's close aide, she will make sure to stay by Yahello's side under his guidance. Aslan's expression turns serious as she admits she has a lot to take care of in Ibelstein and will be leaving Yahello in his hands. Derek nods and tells her he understands. Jason's expression turns earnest as he calls out to Derek after Aslan leaves. He points out that Aslan is trusting him with her sister and that his answer sounded a little lukewarm. He tells the young man to wrap things up quickly and warns that if Pauline finds out, she will throw a fit. He reminds him to be careful and then bids him farewell. Aslan suddenly gasps and admits that she completely forgot something. Jason asks her what she means. Aslan's face drops as she reveals that her mother will be returning next week. She explains that she forgot to give Derek a heads up about it. The guy wonders if that is something that really needs a warning. Her expression darkens with dread and she murmurs that her mother is a little different. Aslan struggles to find the words and stammers that her mother is like a god of anger. Miriella's voice erupts through the estate halls. She demands to know why a commoner is Yahello's teacher and asks what this is all about. Grand Duke Duplain stands nearby and calmly notes that he can hear her just fine, so perhaps she could lower her voice. Miriella snaps that the problem is not about volume. She cries out that this is Yahello they are talking about and their beloved youngest daughter. His face grows heavy with reluctance, and he admits that he does not exactly like appointing commoners to positions either. He explains that every teacher with a good bloodline either turned them down or did not last. Miriella fires back and demands to know how he could let a commoner who used to roll around in the mercenary world into their household. The Grand Duke's voice carries a weary patience, and he responds that finding a decent magic teacher is not that easy. He adds that Derek was recommended by Aslan. Miriela's jaw tightens and her voice wavers. She insists that there still has to be a certain standard. Grand Duke Duplain points out that they have her younger brother too. He notes that the brother once said he was only cast aside, but things are different now. Diela is manifesting magic and Miriela is worried, so she wants them to bring teachers. Miriela's eyes flash with frustration and she challenges him. She asks if he really wants to pull a person wandering the territory and turn him into a private teacher. She demands to know if he thinks running Ebelstein will straighten out if he acts so carelessly. His eyes narrow and he asks what about Ebelstein's social circles. He challenges Miriela right back and asks if she thinks the social circles run any less chaotically. He declares it is a war zone there too. She roars that socially a teacher matters more than anything. Miriela demands to know if a commoner with no family name is acceptable and asks if he is telling her he wants Diela to become a laughingstock of high society. Valerian steps forward and gently asks his mother to please calm down for a moment. He reminds her that she did not come here to fight with his father. Miriela's fury burns strong and she orders Valerian to step aside. She declares that this is not something they can just let slide. Reg speaks up from across the room and states that in the end the question is whether the commoner mage has the qualities to be Diela's teacher. He looks at Miriela and asks if that is right, mother. Her eyes go wide as she hears Reg's voice and she calls out his name in surprise. Reg calmly explains that a commoner becoming a noble's magic teacher is not a normal situation. However, he adds that if that commoner truly has the necessary qualities, then he does not think it will be a major problem. Reg tells his father that he will test the qualities of this man called Derek. He starts to say that if he defeats Derek in a magic spar, but the Grand Duke cuts him off with a firm command to stop. Grand Duke Duplain states flatly that Derek is the real deal as a mage. The room falls silent for a long moment. Then Reg asks, what about testing Diela instead? Valerian's brow furrows as she processes what Reg just suggested. Reg explains that if Derek is such an excellent teacher, then Diela, who has been under his instruction, must have achieved considerable results as well. He declares that he will personally speak with Diela and verify her results. The Grand Duke stares at Reg in silence. Valerian rushes after Reg as he leaves the room and calls out his name once and then shouts it again. He demands to know what on earth Reg is thinking by proposing a magic spar. Reg's expression turns cold and he asks Valerian if he truly believes Diela has turned over a new leaf. He presses further and asks if Valerian has forgotten everything she has done. Valerian insists that even so she is his only sister. He urges that they need to hold her close and protect her. Reg snarls that Diela's blood is what has been trying to bring their house down. He points out that everything she has done so far was already enough. He warns that if she creates incidents in high society like this, it really will be the end of them. Valerian's face drains of color and he whispers Reg's name. He asks if that is truly how he feels. Reg states without hesitation that Diela was the first one to cross the line. He declares that the best thing for Diela is to be kept shut away in the annex. Valerian stands frozen and he cannot find any words to respond with. The man turns and walks away without looking back. Early the next morning, Diela bursts into Derek's room and calls his name. Our boy groggily asks what is going on so early. The young man sits with a book in his hands. A notice reads that if he loses the magic spar, he is fired. Derek tells Diela matter-of-factly that he has already heard about it. She warns him that young Master Reg is already a designated one-star mage and adds that it will probably be difficult for him to win. Her frustration boils over and she demands to know if that is all he has to say. She screams that he is going to get fired. Derek answers her without flinching and says he is a mercenary. He explains that he does the job he is hired to do and takes the pay that comes with it, and that is all. The guy adds that he has already been paid more than enough. Diela looks at him with wide searching eyes and asks if he really means that. 1 week later, the Duplain family crest flies above the estate grounds. The arena grounds stand ready outside the Duplain residence, and they are lined with onlookers. Grand Duke Duplain looks at Derek and acknowledges that he has come. He looks at Derek and acknowledges that he has come. The young man stands before the Grand Duke with a calm and steady gaze. Reg steps forward and his killing intent washes over the arena. His eyes blaze with dark resolve. He thinks to himself that this will not be a simple magic spar, and he swears that he is going to break Diela completely. Reg fixes his gaze on Diela and vows silently that he will make her regret the path leading to her ruin. The arena crackles with tension as the spar is about to begin. Diela turns to Derek and asks him if he really means what he says about not caring what happens as long as he gets paid. Our boy tells Diela that she has probably noticed it too. He explains that her magic growth has already gotten on track. He adds that she cannot use one-star magic right away, but it will not take that long. Derek continues and says this is because she was born with Duplain blood. Diela asks him why he is suddenly saying all of this and reminds him that he has already told her this before. He brings up the School of the Wild and explains that it is a school that requires being born with a natural rather than systematic aptitude for mana. Diela's voice trembles as she blurts out and asks why he is saying that kind of thing right now. She falls silent for a moment and then murmurs his name softly. Tears well up in Diela's eyes, and she admits she knows she is not that great of a student, but she still wants to keep learning magic from him. She cries out that she does not want anyone else as her teacher. Derek tells her calmly that he will say something in advance. He admits that he does not know the etiquette or rules for nobles' magic spars because he has never done one before. The young man continues and says that what he can teach her is how to win in a fight. He asks Diela if she wants to win. The crowd buzzes with cruelty. One voice sneers that it looks like Lady Diela does not have any magic after all. Another mocks that even her famous teacher will not cut it. Someone scoffs at how a commoner like that can come out of Duplain. Others whisper that Duplain's pride is in ruins, and that the little girl should have just gone to a proper school and that her manners are terrible. Through all of it, Diela listens. Then, with quiet fire in her eyes, she tells Derek to make her win. Derek and Diela stand together, and they are ready to face whatever comes next. She is not here as Raig's younger sister. She is not here as the youngest of House Duplain either. Our boy watches her step forward, and his expression is calm and certain. She stands there only as Derek's student and a mage. The Duplain family crest flutters high above the arena grounds. Below, the crowd gathers as Diela and Raig take their positions on the dueling platform. The referee clears his throat and announces that they will be applying the basic rules of the non-mana variant of the Belstein Magic Salon. He adds that the standard duel regulations of the Belstein Salon will govern the match. Raig gives the signal and declares that they should begin. The referee explains that the match will use General Pelion's protective magic circle. He notes that it is an accessory that activates right before the wearer takes magic damage that exceeds their tolerance. Derek observes the glowing orb hovering between both fighters. He notes to himself that it is an expensive accessory meant to keep nobles safe during duels, and that you can basically throw money at it. Our boy considers that the duration of the protection is 10 minutes. He realizes Raig plans to finish this fight well before that timer runs out. Raig's lips move as he chants an incantation, and across the platform, Derek begins channeling his own mana in response. His spell fires off and streaks across the arena toward Diela. She braces herself as magical energy surges around her. Raig tells Diela coldly that he needs her to return to the annex. Another blast of magic rockets toward her position. Diela's eyes blaze with determination, and she channels her mana to push back against the incoming spell. Someone in the crowd cries out her name in alarm. His expression twists with anger, and he snarls to himself about how she dares to block his attack. Magic swirls violently around the platform as Raig fires another volley, and Diela barely holds her ground. Our boy watches from the stands with a sharp gaze. He notes that Raig handled the exchange with ease but deliberately used completely different spell types to confuse Diela's combat instincts. Raig is forcing her to react wildly and burn through her mana faster. Another blast of energy crashes toward Diela as Raig keeps up the relentless pressure on her. Diela throws up a wall of ice crystals to shield herself, and the impact shatters against her barrier. Raig's eyes narrow with contempt, and he sneers at the idea that Diela thinks she can block his magic with a chunk of ice. His confidence turns savage, and he declares that since all he is dealing with are tricks, he will break through her defenses with pure firepower. He roars at Diela to try blocking this one too. Derek's voice echoes in Diela's memory. He tells her to remember this Lady Diela. In the memory, Derek explains that mercenaries fight differently from nobles. He adds that they do not treat fighting fair and square as a virtue. The guy's tone turns serious, and he states that their only focus is victory. Derek tells her that regardless of all that she can still create an ending where she wins. He asks if she is really fine with that, and Diela's eyes light up. She shouts back that she absolutely is. Back in the arena, Diella locks her gaze on Rhaeg with fierce resolve. Diella charges forward through the storm of magic and uses Derek's lessons to weave through the barrage. Ice and energy clash across the platform as Diella presses her attack. Derek's voice continues in her mind, and he explains that among mercenaries there are people who always win even when there is a gap in strength. He goes on and says that those people do not duel, they fight. Our boy explains that by fight he means they control the battlefield by making use of their terrain and surroundings. Diella does exactly that and uses the arena itself as part of her strategy. He continues and says they literally use any and all available methods to seize victory. Diella throws everything she has at Rhaeg. Magic erupts across the platform as the two exchange blows at close range. Derek adds that they must even take advantage of the very short window when their opponent lets their guard down. Diella's lips curl into a faint grin after a successful exchange because she has found her opening. Rhaeg declares that it is over. A massive surge of magic crashes down on the arena in a blinding flash. The impact sends shockwaves rippling outward across the entire platform. Miriella leaps to his feet and shouts Diella's name. Her voice cracks with panic as she screams at Dylan to push the gate open now because Diella is hurt. The Grand Duke commands them both to sit down and declares that it is not over yet. Miriella whips around in disbelief and demands to know what he means. She insists that everyone can clearly see Diella taking the hit from Rhaeg's attack. The Grand Duke states flatly that she is wrong because General Pelion's magic circle never activated. His eyes stay locked on the arena and his calm does not waver for even a moment. Derek settles back into his seat with a quiet expression. The dust begins to clear over the arena. The young man notes that the guy does not even blink. He wonders aloud if he had already expected Diella to endure that much. Rhaeg stands on the platform and his composure is cracking for the first time. His mind races and he mutters that his attack should be landing on Diella. He cannot understand why the magic circle is not activating and insists the spell should be hitting her. A sudden shock jolts through Rhaeg as he senses something wrong beneath his feet. A deafening crack splits the arena floor as ice erupts from below the platform. Pillars of ice magic burst upward through the ground and catch Rhaeg completely off guard. The blast of ice from below sends Rhaeg stumbling, and he blurts out in disbelief that this is an attack from below the platform. The referee notes that by the rules of noble magic salons, attacks from off the arena should not count as a legitimate hit. He adds that even so you still need to pay attention to your actual surroundings during a fight. The observer remarks that Rhaeg probably never even considered something like this in the elegant decorum between nobles. Rhaeg's eyes go wide at the realization. Ice magic surges across the entire arena as Diella presses her advantage with everything she has. Rhaeg steadies himself and admits that landing a clean hit on him will not be easy. He knows this will be difficult for her, but he also realizes that all Diella needs to do is land just one blow on him. Rhaeg's jaw tightens with frustration and he declares that this spar has no trace of noble etiquette at all. He shouts Diella's name across the arena. Diella stares back at him and her expression is calm and fearless. Magic crackles between them as the final exchange begins. Rhaeg studies Diella's face and recognizes something in it. He realizes that the look in her eyes is the exact same expression Derek carries. Rhaeg concludes that Diella could not have come up with this strategy alone. He addresses Derek silently and acknowledges that this was his plan all along. His expression shifts as he makes his decision, and he declares that fine, he will play along. He locks eyes with Diella and tells her that he will go along with this scheme of hers. The dust settles over the arena as the crowd erupts in confusion. Onlookers shout that Diella has gone outside the platform and demand to know what is going on. Someone yells at the referee to raise the flag and call the match immediately. The Grand Duke watches in silence and his expression is unreadable. Miriella stares at the arena and she can barely breathe. Diella's eyes burn with focus as ice energy continues to flow beneath the platform. Rhaeg steadies himself on the platform and murmurs that he can see it now. He sees the flow of mana running through the ground beneath him. He begins chanting an incantation and magic swirls around his hands. His jaw clenches as the ice surges toward his feet every time he starts his incantation. The cold disrupts his stance. He grits his teeth and tells himself that he cannot go down like this. Rhaeg's eyes sharpen as he notices the mana flow from below suddenly stops. He realizes Diella is up to something. He braces himself and decides that whatever she does, he will be ready for it. Diella watches Rhaeg from below and her focus is absolute. The next move will decide everything. A servant in the audience whispers Raig's title in concern and calls out to the young master. Raig launches himself high above the platform. He reasons that Diella should not be able to react to his mana from this distance, but he also knows that trying to cast precise spells from up here is impossible. His eyes narrow as he concludes there is only one way to end this. Raig's face twists with determination, and he declares that he will destroy the entire platform without using an incantation. A massive blast of raw magic crashes down toward the arena, and ice and energy collide in a blinding explosion. Our boy watches from the stands, and his expression is perfectly still. The impact shakes the entire arena grounds. Rag lands back on the crumbling platform, surrounded by debris and dissipating energy. The dust swirls violently as both fighters recover from the exchange. His expression twists with strain as he absorbs the impact of the clash. Rag charges forward through the debris and channels magic into his fists. Diella meets him head-on, and blue magic crackles at her fingertips as she closes the distance. The two exchange blows at point-blank range, and magic sparks between every strike. Her green eyes flash with focus as she reads Raig's next move. She slips past his guard and lands a clean hit on him. The impact sends Raig sliding backward across the platform. He thinks to himself that he has the advantage at close range, and he only needs to land one clean magic strike. Diella presses in anyway and refuses to give him any breathing room. Raig realizes she is deliberately burning through her own mana to deny him the chance to cast. His expression shifts from frustration to something deeper. Raig's shoulders drop as the fight drains out of him. He murmurs Diella's name and tells her it is all right. He acknowledges that this duel is a place for her to prove her own worth. His eyes soften as he finishes the thought. He tells Diella that he will do his best as her brother. Sunlight breaks through the clouds above the arena and casts warm light over the battered platform. Diella stands across from Raig, and tears begin welling in her eyes as his words reach her. Derek's voice echoes from a memory, and he tells Diella to think of it like brushstrokes on a painting. He explains that mana is her paint and spellcasting is her brush. The young man continues and says she needs to collect the free-floating paint with her brush. He tells her to use that to create an entire image and then pauses. He says that is what magic truly means. Her wide blue eyes stare up at Derek with wonder, and the word rings in her mind. Magic. Diella closes her eyes and breathes deep. Blue mana erupts around Diella's body, and she repeats Derek's words to herself. She says, mana is paint, and spells are the brush. Her eyes flash open as power floods through her fingertips, and she whispers that she can feel it. The magic is right at her fingertips. She tells herself to use the paint to draw. The Grand Duke's eyes go wide, and he blurts out in disbelief at what he is seeing. Miriella's voice trembles as she whispers to her husband that Diella is using one-star magic. Raig calls out Diella's name softly because he believes in what she has become. He insists he is still a step ahead and tells himself that even in one-star magic he will hit Diella before she hits him. Both mages fire at the exact same moment. Diella's ice magic and Raj energy magic streak across the arena and collide in a massive explosion that engulfs the entire platform. A towering pillar of crystallized magic rises from the center of the arena as both spells merge and shatter into the sky. The shockwave tears across the grounds and forces spectators to shield their eyes. The Grand Duke and Miriella call out Diella's name together, and their voices cut through the roar. General Pellion's magic circle flickers and crackles above the arena. The protective barrier activates. Diella breathes out, and exhaustion pulls at every muscle in her body. The spar is over. Our boy stares down at the arena, and his red eyes burn through the settling dust. Whatever just happens on that platform, Derek sees every detail of it. Back in the present, Diella stands in the aftermath of the spar, and her eyes shimmer with exhaustion and disbelief. The arena is covered in debris and fading magic. Diella and Raig both stand battered on opposite ends of the platform. Someone announces that the barrier has activated. General Pellion's magic circle glows around Diella, and that confirms Raig's attack lands first. Raig stands across the arena still on his feet, and the result is clear. Diella's lips tremble as the truth sinks in and she whispers that she lost. Then her composure shatters completely and a cry of anguish tears from her chest. The arena falls quiet as the crowd processes what just happened. Miriella rushes forward and calls out to her husband. She demands to know what on earth just happened out there. Her voice shakes with fury, and she cannot believe that this so-called teacher has been teaching her daughter to fight like a common street brawler. She insists that Diela is a young lady of Duplain. The tension among the onlookers is thick enough to cut. The Grand Duke turns his attention to his youngest daughter, and his voice softens. He tells Diela that the look in her eyes has improved a great deal. The Grand Duke turns his attention to his youngest daughter, and his voice softens. He tells Diela that the look in her eyes has improved a great deal. Her eyes go wide as she spots someone in the distance. Rake stands awkwardly to the side and hesitates for a moment. Then he manages a quiet word. His voice comes out stiff and uncertain, and he tells Diela good work. Diela does not stop, though. She keeps running. A maid calls after her and says she will escort the young lady to her chambers. Outside the arena, the sky stretches wide and open over the Duplain estate. Our boy stands alone in the courtyard with his back to the arena. Diela reaches Derek, and her breathing is ragged from running. Tears stream down her face as she chokes out the words and tells him she lost. Her voice cracks as she whispers that she is sorry. Derek looks at her and tells her calmly that it is all right. He continues and says it is fine to lose. The young man tells her to use this frustration and to climb higher and grow stronger. Diela's control finally gives way, and she breaks down sobbing right there in front of Derek. Miriella appears and calls Diela's name. Her voice trembles as she admits she cannot hold it together either. She whispers that Diela has had it rough all this time and calls her baby girl. Diela looks up and calls for her mother. Miriella pulls Diela close and tells her it is okay now and that everything is over. Her voice steadies as she tells Diela to go quickly and get treated. Diela nods weakly and whispers yes. Miriella watches Diela being led away by the maids. She stands there in silence and processes everything she just witnessed. She turns and walks toward the courtyard with purpose. Derek senses someone approaching and glances back. Miriella's voice hits him hard and she calls him a vulgar wretch. She demands to know if he even understands what he has done. Miriella does not let up and accuses him of teaching Diela nothing but cheap tricks. She declares that he has trampled all over a noble's dignity and says he made the Grand Duke's daughter do something dirty and vulgar and beneath her station. She seethes and says there is a word for people who do not even know basic decency. She roars that one ought to have some dignity and value themselves more. The Grand Duke's voice cuts in behind her and he asks Miriella if she knows about this. He states that Derek was teaching Diela exactly the way she needed to be taught. Miriella fires back and demands to know if her husband does not understand who is disrupting the order of this place right now. The guy remains still. Someone mutters in confusion and asks why this is happening to a mere commoner. The tension between all three of them hangs in the air. The Grand Duke speaks plainly and agrees that yes, Derek is a worthless commoner. But then he adds firmly that Derek is also their daughter's teacher. His voice carries the weight of his authority, and he asks what parent in this world treats their own child's teacher like this. He turns to Derek and asks him to please forgive her. He explains that everyone has their own way of loving their child. Our boy nods quietly and tells the Grand Duke that it is all right. The Grand Duke then says he has something important to discuss and asks Derek to follow him. Inside the Grand Duke's private study, the door closes behind them. He settles into his chair and tells Derek plainly that he has raised Diela splendidly. Grand Duke continues and says that, as the master of this estate, he wants to give an appropriate reward. He mentions the highest realm of magic permitted to a commoner. The Grand Duke looks Derek in the eye and asks if he wants 5-star magic. Derek goes still. His mind races and he realizes the Grand Duke has hit the mark exactly. The Grand Duke has tailored the offer perfectly. This is what a 5-star mage and Grand Duke of the nation looks like. When an opportunity like this comes along, it must be seized. He tells the Grand Duke yes, he wants it. Later that night, Derek walks through the quiet hallways of the Duplain estate. He enters a room lined with bookshelves and stacked with research materials. The guy scans the shelves and stops. His eyes narrow in silence as he takes in what lies before him. Our boy murmurs to himself that this is impressive. He notes that there are so many high-tier research materials here that even a Grand Duchy's core mage would not have this kind of collection, and yet every single piece is 3-star spell work. Derek realizes that the magic theories inside are so valuable that most families probably would not even keep them in their estate libraries. He mutters that if Pelin ever finds out about this, she will lose her mind. A maid nearby tilts her head in confusion. Diela marches in with her chest puffed out and clears her throat. She proudly announces that she is a 1-star mage now. Derek looks at her and responds evenly. He says that yes, she used one-star magic once during the spar, so he supposes she can be called a one-star mage. Diela stares at him in disbelief and demands to know if that is it. She points out that his apprentice just leveled up and he does not even seem happy about it. The young man replies flatly that it is not an achievement he has earned himself, is it? Her frustration melts into something softer and she sighs. She admits that he really is not easy to deal with. Our boy notes that she looks like she has recovered well over the past 3 days and adds that she definitely seemed like she was crying her eyes out back then. Her face goes red and she sputters that nobody was crying. She insists it was just something that got into her eyes. Then she complains that her dad should have told her sooner because she thinks Derek is getting kicked out. Derek shifts tone and asks if she is ready to start the lessons. Diela's eyes light up and she asks if she will learn the other spells too since she is growing quickly. The guy tells her that her growth speed is abnormal and that it has not been long since her magic manifestation. Her excitement builds and she rattles off possibilities. She asks if they will start with magic announcements or conjuring or catalysts or windblade magic or that ice spear that feels amazing. Derek cuts her off and tells her they will be practicing magic manifestation. Diela freezes and blurts out in shock asking why. She protests that she thinks they are learning one-star spells. Our boy explains that there are many reasons, but in the end the basics are what matter most. He starts to explain simply that it comes down to mana. Diela interrupts him and says fine, they will do it. The young man pauses because he is surprised. Diela shrugs and says that if he says so, then that is what they will do. She admits she got all excited for nothing, thinking they would be learning fancy new spells. Derek stares at Diela with wide eyes. Diela notices and asks why he is looking at her like that and if there is something on her face. The boy stammers that it is nothing and says it is just surprising to see Diela listen so obediently. Diela's face flushes and she demands to know what Derek takes her for. She insists that she has respected his wishes from the very beginning. Derek raises an eyebrow and repeats the words back. He asks what the maid means by from the beginning. He reminds everyone that Diela poured dirty water over his head. Twice. Diela's face goes white and she asks if he still remembers that. Her composure crumbles and she erupts into forced laughter about what great weather they are having today. She pivots desperately and shouts that magic manifestation sounds incredibly fun and that they should hurry up and practice. Evening falls over the Duplin estate as Diela trains under Derek's guidance. She pushes herself through the exercises and huffs with effort. During a break, Diela catches her breath and mentions that she heard Derek is going to get busier. The young man glances at her and confirms that he heard about it too. Her expression drops and she admits she does not know how she feels about it. She explains that starting next week she will be taking noble etiquette and finishing lessons on top of everything else. The young man asks if that is not a good thing. She has learned one-star magic and now she will receive proper noble education. Diela's frustration spills over and she asks if he really thinks she is happy about this. She lists everything including basic noble etiquette and foreign languages and geography and fashion and botany and piano and drama. She does not understand why she has to learn all of it. Diela wonders aloud how Iseline ever endured all of that. Derek replies that this is exactly why Iseline is called the Flower of Duplin and why she stands at the center of Ebelstein's high society. Diela's voice drops and she murmurs that she just wants to study magic. Derek tells her to do it then. He explains that the Grand Duke hired him so they have plenty of leeway. Diela is not sure the Grand Duke will really give them that much time though. The guy asks if there is anyone who would complain about it at this point. Diela answers that of course there is. Diela explains that her father has acknowledged Derek, but her mother insists they should not just let things stand. She asks why her mother is so determined to drive Derek out. Diela guesses that Muriela is probably worried she will drift away from noble dignity and end up becoming a mercenary. Our boy considers this for a moment. Diela adds that even looking at it fairly, the mercenary life is a far cry from what nobles pursue. She falls quiet, and Derek responds simply that then it is nothing special. Diela tilts her head in confusion, and Derek tells her that silencing the madam is not as difficult as she thinks. He explains that she just has to remove her mother's pretext. The Duplain estate stands beneath a cloudy sky. Inside, the sound of quick footsteps fills the hallway. Muriela frets to herself about how her child could act in such an indecent manner. She mutters about her poor baby. In Muriela's imagination, she pictures the worst. She sees Derek declaring to Diella that this is the mercenary way, and Diella eagerly answering, "Yes, teacher." She imagines Diella barging into Ebelstein high society acting like a brawler. The fantasy continues, and someone screams Diella Catherine Duplain's name. Laughter erupts, and Muriela pictures the entire social circle mocking the family. Muriela snaps back to reality and clutches her head. She groans that even if her husband acknowledges Derek, she is still the mistress of this estate. She steels herself and mutters that she will find a way somehow. A voice calls out behind her, "Mother." Muriela turns around and finds Diella standing there. Muriela's eyes fill with surprise, and she calls out Diella's name softly. She whispers that even parents who raise children wish they could see them run about more and smile. Diella looks at her mother with a gentle and steady gaze. She asks Muriela if she rested well last night. Muriela is caught completely off guard by the question and stammers in confusion. She continues in a warm and measured tone. Diella explains that she could not leave the annex while she was treating her injuries, and she is sorry she missed the chance to greet her mother properly. She adds that there is so much she wants to talk about, but unfortunately she has a piano lesson this morning. Muriela blinks and barely manages to process what she is hearing. She manages a faint reply. She tells her mother she will be going first since her general education schedule is full today. Muriela stammers and asks about etiquette education. She notes Diella has not started it yet and that the lessons begin next week. Diella nods and confirms, "Yes, mother." She adds that thanks to Muriela's consideration, she is very much looking forward to the lessons. Her eyes go wide in disbelief and she manages an okay. She tells Diella to hurry along so she will not be late for class. Outside the estate, Diella walks through the grounds with perfect composure. The maids and servants watch her pass with stunned expressions. A maid stumbles nearby, and Diella immediately rushes to her side. She asks if the maid is hurt and gently tells her not to overstrain herself. The maid stammers in shock and barely manages to respond to Lady Diella's kindness. Muriela watches from a distance as Diella removes every last pretext her mother could use against them. The strategy is already working. At a social gathering in the Ebelstein Noble District, the atmosphere is warm with laughter. A noblewoman tells Aisling that she was fully worried at the last gathering and asks if she is doing all right. She notes that Aisling looked so weighed down with concern. Aisling smiles gently and replies that she did not mean to make anyone worry. She explains that most of what she was concerned about has been resolved, so she feels much better now. The noblewoman's expression softens with relief, and she admits that when she heard Aisling went outside the academy to find a magic tutor for her younger sister, she was so worried. This is Elenti Alphone Belmar, who is the second daughter of Erone Belmar. Aisling thanks her for the concern. Aisling explains that her younger sister Diella needed a magic teacher and adds that she was a bit busy because she went out to find one herself. Her eyes go wide and she asks what Aisling means by going to find someone at a mercenary faction. She asks how Aisling managed to secure a full-time teacher at the Duplain estate. Aisling confirms that the teacher will be teaching full-time and mentions there is a proper reason for it. This is Denise Linier Veltis, who is the second daughter of House Veltis. Aisling nods and confirms that she has seen Diella not long ago. Aisling's voice fills with pride, and she says Diella has become such a proper young lady that she could hardly recognize her. She adds that Diella even manifested one-star magic and that her conduct is now polished and composed. She admits that seeing Diella's progress makes her feel like she needs to work harder herself. Denise tilts her head in surprise and wonders aloud if Aisling is really bragging about dupling Diella. She means the girl everyone used to know. Then she acknowledges that it seems Aisling has found a good magic teacher. Aisling confirms that the teacher does not have a noble title, but his work has been exceptionally capable. She adds that it really was worth going all the way to the Beldun Mercenary Corps to find him in person. Elente's voice drops with curiosity, and she repeats the word mercenary. She muses that if they are talking about Diella, who was the reason their academy tutors all ran away from Duplain, then the transformation must be genuine. Elente considers the teacher's accomplishments and notes that this person not only teaches magic but also improved Diella's conduct and composure. And all of that starts from one-star level. She leans forward with interest and asks Aisling if she may know the name of that magic teacher. Elente adds that if he is Lady Diela's teacher, he will only become more famous in the future. She says she would like to know his name in advance. Aisline pauses for a moment. Aisline answers that his name is Derek. Back at the Duplain estate, Diela sits with a book in her lap. She mentions that Derek is also teaching her a little etiquette. Diela sighs and admits that etiquette really is hard to learn on her own. The maid beside her remarks that it is admirable of Diela to study by herself. Diela corrects her and explains it is less on her own and more that Derek is the one who teaches her. She adds that she can do this much only thanks to him. Her mom nods and takes it in. Miriela paces in her room and mutters Derek's name under her breath with mounting frustration. She grumbles that Diela will not stop talking about him and refuses to come out of her room. Her frustration deepens as she admits she does not know what Derek did to Diela. She cannot deny the results, but she feels there has to be some way around this. Elsewhere, the servants gather and gossip. One says Lady Diela has been so kind to them lately, and another agrees that she has gotten so gentle. Another servant adds that Lady Diela looks like she has been in such a good mood recently, and that she has changed so much in just a few weeks. Dylan hums to herself and admits it really is surprising. He notes finally trying to be reborn as a true lady. He says you can feel noble dignity from Lady Diela now. Miriela concludes that maybe Diela is finally trying to be reborn as a true lady. She says you can feel noble dignity from Lady Diela now. Night falls over the Duplain estate. Outside in the training grounds, our boy channels 3-star magic through his body and pushes himself past his limits. Magic energy crackles around Derek as he drills spell after spell into the empty air. Sweat pours down his face as he pushes through another round of practice. His breathing grows ragged, but he does not stop. Footsteps approach from behind, and someone clears their throat. Reg steps into view and apologizes for interrupting. He asks if he is disturbing Derek's training. The young man tells Reg it is no trouble at all and asks what brings him out here. Reg's expression turns earnest, and he says he wants to talk a bit about Diela. He glances at the materials beside Derek and asks if that is a 3-star spellbook. The guy confirms that the Grand Duke lent it to him. His eyes go wide because he can barely process the idea that the Grand Duke would lend 3-star materials to a commoner. Derek explains calmly that it is a ridiculous level for him right now, but there is no harm in studying ahead of time. The Grand Duke's voice cuts in from the shadows, and he says that is enough. He declares plainly that Derek is a true mage. Reg mutters in agreement. He shakes off the surprise and asks what Derek thinks about what teenage girls like these days. Derek raises an eyebrow at that. Reg hesitates and then stumbles through his question. He explains that it is a bit complicated. He scratches his head and asks if Derek thinks that a hand-embroidered doll made to look like Diela would be something she would like. Derek stares at him. Our boy answers with absolute certainty that the answer is absolutely not. Reg deflates and mumbles that he figured as much. He insists he was not actually going to make one anyway, and admits he is probably not that fashionable either. He suggests they head inside now that Derek is done training. They walk side by side through the estate grounds under the night sky. Reg tells Derek quietly that he is grateful to him. He continues and says the mood in the residence has been good lately. Reg mentions that even Valerian has been focusing on managing the territory, and their father, while he does not show it, looks satisfied. Derek responds that it is hard to read the Grand Duke's feelings. Reg lets out a small laugh and says everyone in this mansion would agree with that. The two share a brief and quiet moment of understanding. Reg's voice drops and he admits he guesses he should accept what he needs to accept too. He says people can change, and especially kids at that age. He confesses that he simply did not realize it because he was right next to her all along. But since Diela has changed, he is thinking he should change too. Reg looks at Derek directly and tells him that this is all thanks to him. He says thank you. The air shifts and Reg brings up that Diela's magic feels like a different kind of mana. He asks if Derek has noticed the difference. The young man confirms that it is something like drawing a picture. He describes it as a temperament she will eventually need to explain to the people around her. He adds that it would not be possible for just anyone to describe that experience naturally. Derek explains that Diela uses the ancient arts of the School of the Wild. Reg nods slowly and says he has heard of it. Derek continues and says each person's way of using magic differs under that school. The guy tells Reg that once Diela reaches a certain level, she will study on her own without needing anyone to teach her. He adds that at that point, a teacher's interference can even become more of a hindrance. Rake's expression tightens and he murmurs that he sees. He repeats the words quietly about that level as the weight of what Derek is saying sinks in. Her time to shine will come eventually. 2 months later, the Duplain estate is bathed in warm spring light and Diella runs up to a maid. She asks her to look at the flowers she has brought. Diella beams as she tucks a flower into the maid's hair. The maid smiles and says they smell wonderful. She adds that it feels like spring has finally come around for the first time in years. She tells the maid that she is already comfortable using one-star magic and that she has gotten much closer to the servants too. She adds softly that she guesses she missed so much all this time and thinks it is all thanks to Derek. The maid asks if today is a magic lesson day and notes that Diella looks especially happy. Diella perks up and says she looks happy. She decides she should put the flowers in water first. The maid mentions that Diella gives her one of the leftover flowers and that she plans to give the rest to Derek. Diella holds the bouquet gently as she walks toward Derek's room with a warm smile on her face. Diella holds the bouquet gently as she walks toward Derek's room with a warm smile on her face. She stops in the doorway and the flowers are not still in her hands. Her smile falters and she asks Derek what he means. Our boy looks at her with steady and quiet eyes. He tells her she heard him. Derek says plainly that there is nothing left for him to teach her. He reflects that this is how the chronicles of the seasons always are. Just as there is no eternal winter, there is no eternal spring. Our boy explains to the Grand Duke that His Grace has already noticed it as well. He points out that Lady Diella belongs to the School of the Wild, and among those who carry that temperament, her talent is especially strong. Derek adds that if he involves himself with her any further, he will only end up breaking her wings. The Grand Duke's expression turns solemn as he takes in those words. He replies that he understands and that there is no longer any reason for Derek to remain in this mansion. The young man nods and confirms that is correct. They stand together in the Grand Hall and a heavy silence hangs between them. The Grand Duke tells Derek that thanks to him many things have changed. He says that because of Derek his daughter was able to grow. A weight settles over his face as he confesses something personal. He admits that he has no confidence to appropriately express the feeling that he has not been a good father, but he is now beginning to realize it. After a long silence, the Grand Duke asks when Derek will leave. Our boy explains that he heard Lady Iseline will visit the Shinwood soon and then return to Ebelstein. His tone stays calm and measured as he tells the Grand Duke that he plans to ride in her carriage at that time. The Grand Duke responds that he sees and then asks about the library key. Derek says he will return the spellbook he is currently reading and pass the key along through the head butler. The Grand Duke cuts him off and states firmly that there is no need for that. He tells Derek to return the key now. His gaze turns cold and final, and he tells Derek that if there is nothing else he may go. Derek holds his silence and walks away. Derek walks alone through a hallway of the Duplain estate. The guy strolls through the corridor and thinks to himself about how he got comfortable somewhere, and now it is time to get up and leave again. Derek steps slow as he notices someone ahead. He murmurs her name and greets Lady Diella. Diella stands before him with a quiet look on her face and tells him that it cannot be helped. She adds that she knows he will not listen, but she wants to say it anyway. Neither of them speaks for a moment, and the silence stretches between them. Diella asks softly if he cannot stay. Derek tells her that as always he will be returning to life as a mercenary. He mentions that he will study a lot of magic too. He also says that once Lady Diella picks up more skill, she will go to Ebelstein for her debutante. The young man tells her with warm certainty that they can meet again then. He adds that if his level rises a little more by that time, he will be able to teach her something new. Diella pouts and mutters that he is annoying. Frustration and fondness mix across Diella's face as she admits that he always says the right thing, so she has nothing to say back. Later that night, the sound of heavy breathing fills the darkness. A cruel voice echoes through the dark and tells Diella she is a useless child and an utterly incompetent child. The voice demands to know why she dares to boast about bearing the bloodline when she does not have a speck of talent. A single blue eye fills the darkness, and it is wide with fear. Diella's chest heaves as she tries to catch her breath, and she realizes it was just a nightmare. A maid bursts into the room and asks if Lady Diella is all right. She says she heard shouting and asks what happened. A sharp idea flickers behind Diella's eyes, and she wonders to herself what would happen if she creates a pretext. She thinks about it further and considers making herself appear weak or troubled in the same way someone did before her. Diella wonders if she did that, then people would stay for her sake. Worry creases the maid's brow, and she asks again if Lady Diella is all right and whether she is feeling unwell. Diella goes completely still, and the temptation lingers in the silence. She says no, and her voice is firm enough to close the door on that idea for good. She says no, and her voice is firm enough to close the door on that idea for good. Diella tells the maid that she is fine and not to worry. She adds that something like that will not make her vulnerable. The next day, Derek's attention fixes on Iselin as he tells her that if she drops by the commercial district, she should check in at the guild. She nods and says she would appreciate that, and they exchange their goodbyes. Sadness flickers behind the question as someone asks if Derek is really leaving. Our boy replies that he has to because he needs to return to where he belongs. Valerian tells Derek that life in the mansion could not have been easy for him all this time. He says that if anything hard ever comes up, he will help as much as she can. Derek dips his head and thanks him sincerely. A beat of silence passes between them, and it is heavy with everything still unsaid. Diella scoffs and asks why he is looking at her like that. She presses further and asks if he really thinks she is going to beg him not to go. She insists he not get the wrong idea because she is not a child anymore. Pride and warmth wrestle across Derek's face, and he tells Diella that it was an honor to be able to teach her. He says this even though he cannot properly declare himself her teacher. Diella grins and tells him she knows it already. He is the first proper teacher of the great Diella Duplain after all. The young man stands still for a long moment and processes her words. She tells him to take care of herself. She warns Derek not to do anything reckless and not to push herself too hard and to eat well. Our boy assures him he will be fine and asks her not to surrender himself either. Defiance and confidence blaze in Diella's eyes, and she declares that she is already an adult and can take care of herself now. Derek repeats her words silently in his mind. She is already an adult and she can take care of herself. The weight of everything they have shared passes between them without a single word. The guy turns back one last time and calls out to Lady Diella. Derek reaches out and gently pats her head. He tells her that she does not need to become an adult so early. Tears well up in Diella's eyes as she stands there unable to speak. Derek turns and walks away, and his cloak catches the wind behind him. She calls after him and shouts his name at the top of her lungs. Joy breaks through her tears as Diella waves and shouts that she will see him again. Without looking back, our boy raises his hand and tells her to meet him again in Ebelstein. Lady Diella. Diella smiles through her tears and whispers that she will. In the Ebelstein commercial district, the streets bustle with merchants and noise. A crowd has gathered around a brawl in the street, and onlookers shout to kill him and beat him up more. Fists fly as the violence continues in the middle of the crowded road. Panic fills Pelline's face as she spots the chaos and screams out for Derek. The fighting intensifies in the street and draws even more attention from passers-by. Our boy appears with a calm smile on his face and red eyes glowing. He says he is back home. The story picks up at the Tavern Beldune's Tier in Ebelstein, which is the old stomping ground of our boy Derek. Jason slides a drink across the table and tells Derek that this is a welcome back gift and to just drink it. Derek stares at the glass and points out that this is alcohol, and he does not understand why soldiers would ever fight over it. Pauline's brow furrows as he studies Derek's face. She asks if Derek was always this pale and wonders if he just got even paler after living like a noble. She leans in and mentions that after hearing Derek is working as a magic teacher, she expected him to come back at least a little different. She demands to know what happened and tells Derek to spill everything. The young man shrugs and says he simply worked there. He adds that there is nothing to tell. A grin breaks across Pauline's face as he teases that Derek is talking like a noble now. She asks if it would kill him to open up a little. Jason tells Pauline that is enough and hands her a drink. Pauline lets out a deep sigh and groans that she is so annoyed. She whines that she goes through hell working all the missions by herself while Derek was off playing teacher. Irritation flashes across Pauline's face, but Jason points out that thanks to all that hard work, they bring back plenty of money. He asks Derek if the Duplain job pays well too. Derek reaches into his bag and says he received something more important than money. He places a thick leather-bound book on the table, and Jason and Pauline freeze and stare at it. Jason mutters that it looks like it could be a 2-star spellbook, but something feels off about it. The guy calmly shakes his head and says no, it is not a 2-star. He tells them it is a 3-star spellbook. Pauline and Jason lose their minds at the same time. Jason shrieks and asks if he stole it, and then threatens to kill him if he says something that casually again. Pauline yells that she does not care if it is stolen because she has never even seen a 3-star spellbook in her life, and she wants to know where to steal one too. After a long silence, Derek tells them the Grand Duke gives it to him as a gift. Pauline completely loses it and erupts. She screams at him not to lie and calls him a little punk and asks if he is looking for an early grave. She jaw hangs open as the truth sinks in and she is at a complete loss for words. Our boy ignores the chaos and shifts the conversation by asking Jason if any requests have come in lately. Jason blinks and asks if Derek is seriously taking a request right after returning. Our boy nods and says it does not need to be anything complicated. He mentions that he feels like he is losing his edge a bit and wants something simple like an extermination job. Jason waves him off and tells him to get a grip because he is already plenty strong. He adds that there is always a shortage of manpower, so if Derek wants a priority slot, he can arrange one. Determination fills Derek's eyes as he tells Jason he wants to start tomorrow and that he wants to begin as soon as possible. The young man and a companion sit together on a bench in the countryside with a calm sky stretching above them. Pauline sprints through the forest in a panic as a monster crashes through the trees behind them. Derek is right there with his blade drawn and ready to engage the creature alongside the fleeing companion. He swings his sword, and a streak of blue magic energy trails along the blade as he cuts through the enemy. A guild completion stamp marks another finished job. Nearby, a campfire crackles in the evening darkness. The warmth of the fire flickers across Derek's face as he sits at the campsite late into the night, with his companion asleep beside him. Derek stands alone in the wilderness and channels blue energy through both hands to train his 3-star magic. The energy surges outward and slams into its target with a thunderous impact. A massive blast of magic tears through the training ground and sends shockwaves rippling through the air. Derek doubles over and catches his breath while huffing hard. He thinks to himself that he has mostly gotten it down to the point where he can use it in real combat. He channels another wave of energy and fires it into the distance to test his control. The guy sits down with the 3-star spellbook open in front of him and admits to himself that the wall to 3-star magic really is high. The leaves around Beldun's tier glow golden as autumn settles over Ebelstein. Snow blankets the same street now, and the tavern sign creaks in the cold wind as winter arrives. A bitter chill grips the air outside the tavern as the temperature drops even further. Pauline shivers and complains that it is freezing and wonders how much colder it is going to get. Another voice chuckles and says it is good to be young. Jason marvels at the fact that Derek goes up the mountain in this kind of weather, and someone else groans that they keep collapsing whenever it warms back up. He shakes his head and tells Derek he is the only person crazy enough to bring back a monster's head in weather like this. Derek accepts the praise with a quiet nod and says thank you. A steady calm settles over the young man's expression as he leans back and says he feels alive again. Jason tells Derek that since he is heading back to base tomorrow, he should rest properly today. He mentions that a new request just happens to have timing that fits perfectly. Derek asks what kind of request it is. Jason tells him it is an entourage job and an easy one, though it might be a bit of a hassle. Concern passes over Jason's face as he tells Derek that he is way too stiff from obsessing over 3-star training and that even if it is difficult, he needs to loosen up a little. In the nobles district of Ebelstein, the magic sparring arena stands tall and imposing. A red-haired figure waits near the entrance of the arena, and her presence is commanding even from a distance. Alente asks who she is sparring with today. An attendant explains that to practice her offensive magic, they have arranged a commoner for her. Shock and displeasure flash across Alente's face, and she asks if they are really telling her to beat up a commoner right now. The attendant assures her that this is also part of her training. He adds that they have promised the commoner sufficient compensation so she may practice to her heart's content. Alente gives a reluctant nod and mutters that she supposes it is fine. She notes that beating up a commoner is not exactly her idea of real training. Worry creases Alente's brow as she points out that the commoner is still going to get hurt. She reminds them that she will be a 2-star mage soon and asks her teacher if there is not a huge difference between 1-star and 2-star magic. Derek clears their throat behind her and announces their arrival. Alente turns with a relaxed confidence and asks if he is her sparring opponent for today. Our boy introduces himself simply by name. The young man nods and introduces herself in return. Alente pauses and repeats his name. She mentions that she has heard it a lot from somewhere but cannot quite place it. A curious energy stirs behind Alente's eyes, but she shakes it off. She tells him to come along and head to the arena. Alente faces Derek across the arena floor and asks if he knows the basic etiquette of magic sparring. Derek answers that he knows the basics. Satisfaction settles across Alente's expression and she says good. She tells him to resist as much as he can because she plans to end this quickly. Derek considers his options in silence. Meanwhile, Alente thinks to herself that if she blasts him out of bounds with a big enough hit, this whole thing will be over in no time. Our boy speaks up and asks her to clarify something. He wants to know exactly how he should resist and in what way she needs him to be most helpful. Alente stares at him because she is completely thrown off. She asks what kind of ridiculous question that is. The young man holds her gaze without flinching and explains that he needs to know how much he should resist in order to be truly helpful to her. A charge of tension fills the arena as both sides prepare themselves. The bald older man watching from the sidelines lets out a short laugh. He chuckles and mutters that Derek sure has a funny way of talking. Alente refocuses and repeats her earlier instructions. She insists that he resist with everything he has got. Derek straightens up and tells her very well. A calm intensity settles over our boy as he lowers his stance. He tells Alente that it will be as she commands. He tells Alente that he needs to know how much he should resist in order to be helpful to her. Alente lets out a short laugh from the sidelines and chuckles. She remarks that Derek sure has a funny way of talking. Alente locks eyes with Derek and her expression is firm and unyielding. She repeats her instructions and tells him to resist with everything he has. Derek holds her gaze for a long moment before answering. He says very well and tells her it will be as she commands. The title of the series appears below. Blue mana swirls around the young man as he takes his stance in the arena and gets ready for whatever comes. Confidence radiates from Alente as she decides to strike lightly at first to get a feel for his level. She thinks to herself that if one hit is all it takes, then this whole thing is not even a warm-up. She chants an incantation and declares she will map out the gap between nobles and commoners with her own hands. A barrage of ice crystals erupts from Alente's magic and slams into the arena floor around Derek. The dust clears and Derek still stands in the center of the arena, completely unfazed by the attack. The guy deflects the lingering ice shards with a casual sweep of his magic. Alente stares at him in silence and processes what just happened. Derek looks at Alente with an almost bored expression and calmly asks what the next attack is. She mutters under her breath and calls him a little brat. She admits to herself that he does have a reason to be that confident. Alente steels herself and insists that just because he blocked one attack does not mean the wall between them has disappeared. Cold determination hardens across Alente's face as she begins a new incantation. A massive wave of ice magic builds above the arena. Alente roars that it will be over with this and unleashes a devastating blast of ice straight at Derek. The attack crashes into the arena with tremendous force. Shock fills Alente's face as she sees the result of her strongest hit. Derek stands amid a dome of ice with his barrier still holding, and the magic swirls harmlessly around him. Alente observes that Derek is using a simple spell to block everything she throws at him. Disbelief and grudging respect wrestle across Alente's face, and she wonders how he can control such a simple spell to this degree. Alente corrects herself and admits that for a commoner, his level of magic is excellent. She acknowledges that calling him merely a commoner is empty talk at this point. Fire mana begins to swirl around Alente as she switches elements entirely. She admits out loud that she underestimated him. Flames erupt from Alente's hands as she declares that this time she will attack him seriously. Our boy reads the shift instantly and notes that Alente is no longer trying to hit him directly. She is planning to blow away the entire sparring arena instead. Fire rains down across the arena floor. Derek observes that for a noble, having this level of adaptiveness is pretty impressive. The arena floor erupts in flames as Alente's fire magic engulfs every possible escape route. The young man acknowledges that he cannot dodge this one. Blue energy clashes head-on with the wall of fire and sends a shockwave rippling through the arena. The explosion tears through the air as fire and ice magic collide in rapid succession across the battlefield. Derek spots an opening through the chaos and reacts in an instant. Something grazes past Alente at close range before she can react to it. Alente surges forward and closes the gap because she understands that distance is working in Derek's favor. She launches a point-blank ice spear straight at him. Derek thinks to himself that at this range there is no way to dodge it or deflect it with a barrier. A flash of genuine admiration crosses his face, and he admits that her talent is insane. The ice spear connects, and magic explodes at point-blank range between them. Alente stumbles back and clutches her face. She curses and cries out that something is wrong with her eyes. She staggers and lets out a pained groan as her vision distorts around her. Panic claws at Alente's chest and she whips her head around. She demands to know where Derek is hiding and shouts that she cannot see anything. Alente forces herself to focus and talks herself through it. She tells herself to calm down carefully and that she can still catch him. She strains her senses and mutters that if she can just find his position, she can end this. A chill runs down Alente's spine, and she asks herself if something just passed by her. She realizes she cannot hear anything either. Dread fills Alente's eyes as the truth starts to click together. She whispers to herself not to tell her it is what she thinks it is. The guy stands perfectly still in the arena while faint distortions ripple through the air around him. Realization crashes over Alente and she exclaims that it is delusion-type magic that causes hallucinations. She grits her teeth and adds that he even calculated that she would rely on her hearing once her vision failed. A sickening realization twists Alente's expression and she gasps. She says that the first attack that missed was not a miss at all. Fury floods through Alente's entire body as she screams and demands to know how he dares go easy on her. Derek raises his hand and prepares his next move. Alente charges forward and shouts that there is not a chance she will let that stand. He closes the distance in a flash, and Alente notes that he is rushing straight at him. Fierce pride blazes in Alente's eyes as she calls him a fool. She declares that rapid magic manifestation is her specialty. Alente zeroes in on Derek's hands and tells herself to stay focused. She vows that the moment magic manifests from his hand, she will manifest first and end this fight. Both fighters are within arm's reach of each other. Derek shifts his weight and makes a move that Alente does not expect. Alente blinks in confusion because her focus is shattered for just a moment. Something crackles with energy at the bottom of Derek's stance. Shock rips across Alente's face as she looks down and realizes that the tips of his toes are manifesting magic. The magic from Derek's feet connects and sends Alente flying backward with a sharp cry. The teacher watches the impact from the sidelines and his eyes go wide behind his glasses. He leans forward with a look of deep respect and murmurs that it is impressive. He notes that Derek seems to be of the school of the wild, which is not easy to deal with. Magic crackles between both fighters as they face each other across the arena. Alente catches her breath and tells Derek she will be honest. She admits that at first she looks down on him and assumes he is just a blustering liar. She adds that he ends up teaching her something interesting today. Gratitude softens Alente's golden eyes as she looks at Derek and simply says thank you. Alente launches one final attack with everything she has remaining. Our boy meets her head-on and their magic collides in a massive explosion of purple energy that shakes the entire arena. Alente lets out a scream as the force of the clash sends her flying. Up close, Derek's red eyes glow with quiet intensity as he looks down at his opponent. Alente realizes just how far above her he truly is. Alente's teacher steps forward and rings the bell. Dust and fading magic drift through the air as the spar officially ends. Both fighters stand together and bow. Derek thanks Alente for the match. A long silence hangs between them before the title of the series appears. Alente tells Derek that he is a splendid mage. Warmth fills Derek's voice as he pushes the compliment back and tells Lady Alente that she is the one with reflexes he has never seen before. Alente smirks and says that flattering her like that means he must be pretty used to the way this world works. Alente mentions that she hears he is a commoner, but judging by his skill, that seems hard to believe. She admits it is a little mind-blowing. Our boy simply replies that he has to survive as a mercenary. Alente nods and says she likes that kind of humility in a person. She lowers her voice and warns Derek that the old magic teacher behind her probably will not pay him much, and to be careful not to get on his bad side. Alente brightens up and tells Derek that thanks to him she learns a lot today. She adds that there is another sparring match at the arena next time, and she might even get a good result. The young man tells her that with her level of skill he does not think she has much to worry about. Alente waves that off and says, maybe so, but she is not interested in small fry. Something shifts in Alente's golden eyes as she reveals who she truly wants to defeat. She names Aiseline Eleanor Duplain. Derek goes completely still at the sound of that name. Alente catches herself and says she has prattled on for too long. She tells Derek he may go. The guy bows and walks away from the arena grounds. A quiet voice echoes and notes the name Derek of the Buldun Mercenary Corps. She repeats his name to herself and mutters that she has heard it somewhere before. Recognition flashes through Alente's golden eye in a sharp close-up. She remembers exactly where she knows the name Derek from. Alente bolts from where she stands without a second of hesitation. She sprints through the streets and her red hair flies behind her as she chases after Derek. Her footsteps pound against the cobblestones as she closes the gap. Derek stops in his tracks and turns around. Alente points at him and demands to know if it is really him. Fire blazes in Alente's eyes as she declares that he is the mercenary who teaches Yahello. The sky behind them burns orange as the sun sets over Ebelstein. Warm firelight fills an indoor space as the conversation moves inside. Alente wastes no time and dives right in. She tells Derek she will get straight to the point and says she will do anything if it means she can beat Aiseline. Our boy pauses and asks if she truly wants to defeat Lady Aiseline. Alente confirms her goal without a single flinch. She explains that Aiseline is not a 2-star mage yet, so ideally she wants to reach 2-star first. But if that is not possible, she wants to beat Aiseline at the same tier at the very least. Derek notes that Alente has quite a competitive spirit. Her expression tightens as she responds that competitive spirit is not a nice way to dress it up. Derek presses gently and suggests that it is still competitiveness at its core. Alente's voice drops as she admits that before she wants to beat Aiseline so badly she would not even hesitate to do something undignified. Shame and honesty war across Alente's face as she admits that jealousy is dirty and pathetic. She confesses that she is jealous of Aiseline. Alente continues and says the results never turn out well. She reveals that no matter how much she badmouths Aiseline behind her back, it changes nothing. She adds that no matter how hard she tries to tear Aiseline down or tries to understand and overcome her own feelings, none of it works. Vulnerability cracks open across Alente's expression. Derek stays silent for a long moment and then asks why she is telling him all of this. Alente responds that she wants him to know her sincerity even if it means exposing her shameful side. Alente adds that she has a few things she wants to ask, and Derek tells her to please go ahead. She says that since he has sparred with her, he should know well enough by now. She explains that he should understand how skilled Aiseline is and what Alente's own skills are like. Alente tells Derek that is exactly why she is asking him. Alente leans forward and asks the question that burns in her chest. She asks what she must do to defeat Aiseline. Our boy holds his silence and considers his words carefully. He begins by acknowledging that Lady Aiseline's skill is at an astonishing level, but adds that Alente also possesses tremendous skill of her own. He continues and says that if she works hard to refine her abilities, she could surely improve. But our boy catches himself mid-answer. He thinks to himself that sometimes you can read a person's heart from their eyes, and the young lady sitting in front of him right now is not asking because she wants praise. Derek realizes she is desperate. He thinks that she is desperate enough to want an answer, even from a lowly mercenary like himself. The firelight flickers between them in the quiet room and casts long shadows across both their faces. The young man looks Alente straight in the eyes and tells her the truth. He says she cannot beat Aiseline. The words hit Alente hard. She murmurs that even so. Fierce resolve hardens every line of Alente's face, and she declares that even so she wants to win. She says that even if it is impossible, she will find a way to win. Derek says nothing and studies the fire in her eyes. Alente presses her case and refuses to back down. She points out that Derek manages to turn that good-for-nothing Yahello into a mage so he can do the same for her and help her defeat Aiseline. The guy considers her words in silence. He replies carefully and says it is not that there is absolutely no method worth trying, but he adds that before they go further, there are things that are bothering him. Alente's eyes light up, and she leans forward. She says now they are talking and asks what those things are. Derek holds up one finger and asks if she knows exactly how he teaches Lady Yahello. Blue mana crackles around his hand as the weight of the question sinks in. Alente admits she does not know the details but tells him not to worry because she will do anything to win. Derek nods and moves on to his second point. Our boy reminds her that as she knows he is a mercenary, he warns that people will talk about a noble taking lessons from someone like him. He adds that they will suggest it is disgraceful for a noble to be studying under a mercenary and asks if she is prepared for that kind of reputation damage. Alente cuts him off and tells him to listen because she is serious right now. She declares that she is going to become someone whose name resounds across the entire empire. She adds that if she cannot even take first place in Ebelstein's social circle, that would be completely absurd. Passion and defiance burn together in Alente's voice, and she tells Derek not to dare judge her sincerity for such a petty reason. She says she knows very well what matters more than pride. Derek interrupts with a single word and says no. He explains that what he is actually saying is that she needs to pay him properly because he is a mercenary. Alente bursts out laughing and says money is what he means. She assures him happily that of course she can pay as much as he wants. She fans herself and wonders out loud why this room is suddenly so hot. The young man watches her reaction with his red eyes glowing in the firelight. He thinks to himself that if she is truly this serious, then he too should reciprocate her sentiment and use harsh methods. The noble ladies gather for a social event. Someone mentions that the next gathering will feature a magic sparring match and that young lady Alente has become even more outstanding lately. Aislinn listens closely and remarks that she needs to train hard as well. One of the noble ladies gasps and says the next gathering is already here and that she absolutely must attend. Another lady tells Aislinn she is quite humble for someone who dominates every match. Alente arrives at the gathering and someone calls out to greet her. They say they are glad to see young lady Alente here. Aislinn smiles at Alente and says she was just talking about her. Alente fires back that she knows because she could hear Aislinn's voice from far away. The other nobles exchange uneasy glances and agree they probably should not get involved. Alente asks Aislinn if she even needs to prepare for the match. She points out that recently Aislinn does not lose a single match and that everyone calls her the flower of House Duplain. Aislinn thanks her for the compliment but warns that since Alente is her opponent, she cannot let her guard down. Alente reveals that she actually brings in a new magic instructor, so she is feeling a bit more confident this time. She mentions that her new instructor is a commoner. Aislinn raises an eyebrow and notes that if Alente is vouching for him, she must have considerable trust in this new magic instructor. Her lips curl as she clarifies that to be precise, it is not her who places trust in him. Aislinn tilts her head in confusion and asks what she means by that. Alente leans in and reveals that her instructor's name is Derek. Recognition flickers across Aislinn's face and she remembers Derek and his connection to Yahello. She recalls how he accomplishes things others cannot. She notes that Derek is truly someone dependable and trustworthy. Aislinn accepts the praise quietly and processes what Alente just revealed. Alente excuses herself from the gathering early and mentions she has an evening training session to attend. The young lady Aislinn watches her leave and murmurs quietly that Derek is not a bad person after all. Inside Beldune's tier, Jason sits stunned as someone reports that a noble from House Belmare has tracked down the tavern address and shown up on her own. Jason shakes his head and tells Derek that the scale of his work just keeps growing. The young man tells Jason that this particular job requires more than what he can handle alone and that he needs to make it work here in Ebelstein. Jason leans back and asks bluntly whether it is even possible to beat young lady Aislinn in a duel. Our boy replies calmly that it is not like it is impossible. Derek explains that if young lady Alente reaches the 2-star rank, then, no matter how talented young lady Aislinn is, the difference in rank alone will overwhelm her. Jason crosses his arms and says he has heard enough about impossible methods. He demands to know what plausible approach Derek actually has in mind. The guy meets his gaze and says that it is precisely because the method is plausible that he needs Jason's help. He stares at him in silence and processes the request. Derek adds that for safety he needs Pauline too. Jason narrows his eyes and mutters that Derek is thinking of something dangerous rather than realistic. Our boy replies that reality is inherently dangerous. Pauline bursts in raging that those bastards trick her. She screams that she falls for it completely and that she is swindled by con artists. Jason waves it off and tells Derek to just take her along. Outside the tavern, the evening air hangs cool over Ebelstein. Derek stands across from Alente at the training ground and tells her they will begin with the sparring lesson first. Alente stands ready and her red hair catches the last light of the day. The young man announces that for starters they will go through 10 repetitions and afterwards they will look at her applied magic. Alente sputters and demands to know if he is really going to dive straight in with no warm-up or explanation. The young man tells her he is first testing her practical combat abilities. Alenti protests that making a noble train without even a basic explanation is absurd, and that hiring a mercenary is clearly a mistake. She catches herself and mutters that it is not like she is going to refuse since she does not hire him for noble etiquette lessons. Derek nods and says he will begin. The training hits Alenti hard as spell after spell forces her to react on pure instinct. By the end of the round she is doubled over and gasping for air. He tells Alenti she has done good work and to take a 10-minute break before they review her basic magic techniques. Alenti's eyes go wide with disbelief and she asks what he means by 10 minutes because she does not have any mana remaining. Derek tells her flatly that if she squeezes hard enough mana will come out. He studies her next attempt and tells her that what she just produces is not an ice spear. He orders her to focus and draw out 10 more ice spears properly. Alenti screams in frustration as she forces her depleted body to keep casting. Derek does not let up and tells her she has 5 more attempts remaining. He adds that her next task is 100 basic arrows. Alenti groans and insists she has no mana at all. She is completely drained and her breath is ragged and her body trembling. Derek finally tells her that she has done good work and that she may have dinner now. Derek asks Alenti if she is all right. He tells her quietly that if it is too hard then giving up is also an option. Before Alenti can respond, he pushes further. He reminds her that before they begin, she makes a declaration to him and asks if it is only physical pain. Alenti lifts her head and fires back that he does not understand what she has been through. She says that in order to survive the politics of Ebelstein's high society, something like this is nothing. Our boy nods and says he sees. He admits he is short-sighted. Alenti brushes it off and explains that she is just a little tired from attending the social gathering earlier today. She insists that tomorrow she can really give it her all. Derek's expression does not change and he responds that if this level of training is not enough, then tomorrow they should raise the intensity even more. Alenti blinks and repeats the word tomorrow, asking what he means. Our boy tells her with a straight face that he assumes he mentions it already. He explains that what they just finished is the evening session. Alenti lets out a shaky laugh and tells him he makes funny jokes. The young man looks at her without a trace of humor in his red eyes. He tells her he has never received any requests for jokes. The next morning, Derek cheerfully tells Lady Alenti that she can do more. He says just 5 more magic arrows with a bright tone that hides no mercy at all. Alenti lets out a pained groan as she forces out another spell. Derek insists there is still mana in her body and bumps the count to 10 more arrows. Alenti shrieks and demands to know why he keeps increasing the number. The young man tells her calmly that if she cannot run anymore, they will switch to mana manifestation training instead. Alenti immediately caves and stammers that she will run. She drags her body forward and each breath is heavier than the last. She is barely keeping her legs moving. Derek asks if she is all right and Alenti gasps and insists she is fine. She forces a grin and says this is fun. The guy replies that if it seems impossible then giving up is always an option. Defiance hardens across Alenti's face as she fires back that giving up is never an option and this much is not even a real workout. Derek watches her in silence for a moment. He nods and says he thinks she has rested enough so it is time to spar. Alenti sputters and protests that she only just sits down. 2 weeks pass in a blink. At a noble gathering, Alenti can barely keep her eyes open. She asks Lady Denise to please wake her up when Lady Aislinn arrives, and Denise nods and agrees to keep watch. She murmurs her thanks and admits she has been so preoccupied with magic training lately that she is running on empty. Denise studies Alenti with quiet concern and asks why she pushes herself so hard. Alenti goes quiet for a long moment. A simple certainty fills Alenti's voice as she answers. She says it is to win because she wants to win. The weight of those words settles between them. Denise softens and tells Alenti to hang in there and promises she will cheer for her. A voice rings across the hall and announces that Lady Aislinn has arrived. The entire gathering stirs at the announcement. Aislinn makes her entrance as all eyes turn toward her. Someone excitedly tells Aislinn about a new clothing store and invites her to go check it out. She perks up and agrees. Alenti pauses as she notices something. Anxiety flickers behind Alenti's eyes as she asks if Aislinn already leaves, and the answer is yes. Alenti sighs with relief and then panics. She asks whether Aislinn sees her dozing off while she is sprawling on the yard, and the response is probably not. Aislinn observes that Lady Alenti seems extremely tired lately, and she wonders aloud if Alenti is actually okay. The concern lingers as the gathering winds down. A servant informs Alenti that a gift has arrived from House Duplin. Alenti looks up and asks from House Duplin. The servant clarifies that it appears to be from Lady Aislinn personally. The items are all high-quality mana recovery supplies, and the servant notes they would be a great help. The servant advises against discarding them. Alenti does not hesitate for even a second and tells the servant to throw them away. She repeats herself firmly and says to throw them all away and not to let her see any of them. The servant nods quietly and obeys. She shifts gears and asks if Derek is here for her lesson. The servant confirms he arrives at dawn and is preparing. A letter is read aloud and addressed to the dear young ladies of Rosia Salon. It begins with a note that winter approaches and soon the pure white snow will fall. The letter continues as Aislinn writes to ask how everyone is doing in the cold winter. She mentions that her territory has produced many quality goods. Aislinn writes that she wants to share those goods with the young ladies and is sending them as a gift. She closes by wishing each of them a peaceful day and signs with her name. Our boy notes that Alente is early today and Alente tells him there is no time for pleasantries. Alente's expression tightens as she asks Derek for his honest assessment of her progress. Derek blinks and asks what she means. The cold air hangs between them as Alente presses for an answer. Alente reminds him that he knows perfectly well it has been several weeks since training begins. She tells him to be honest about what he thinks of her. Derek holds his silence for a painfully long moment. He finally answers and tells her that giving up is a good strategy too. The words land hard. Frustration boils over as Alente demands to know why he keeps offending her like that. The young man apologizes and says he does not mean it that way. Alente fires back and asks what he is even talking about. She presses harder and demands to know how Aislinn can possibly be beaten. Alente reminds him that this is exactly why she hires him. She says she does not pay him to hear him suggest she give up. She snaps that if he is going to talk, he should say something useful because he is wasting her time otherwise. Our boy meets her fury with a quiet question and asks what happens if she simply cannot win. He tells her that obsessing over victory may actually hold back her growth. Derek adds that sometimes a person should humbly accept their limits. Alente's voice cracks as she says that if she does that, she would be too pathetic. She reminds him that she is already a dirty and shameful person who is jealous of Aislinn. She says that the daughter of House Belmare should not be someone who walks such an ugly path. The weight of her own words presses down on her. Her composure shatters completely under the weight of her own words, and she cries out that she is just someone who is petty and jealous. Tears streak down Alente's face as she screams that she accepts all of it. She admits how lacking and pathetic she is, and every single bit of it. Her voice drops to a whisper as she says she has admitted everything and that there is no reason to hate Aislinn. She murmurs that she knows that too. But she cannot stop herself from asking why. Alente begs to know why this petty inferiority complex of hers refuses to disappear no matter how much she accepts the truth. Derek looks at her and names what he sees. It is self-hatred. He recalls how Alente tells him she wants him to understand how serious she is, even if she has to expose her shameful side. He remembers her questions and her desperation. The young man pieces it together and recognizes that Alente always carries a subtle self-hatred beneath everything. He recalls her asking what she needs to do to beat Aislinn. At first he assumes it is jealousy or competitive spirit, but now he sees that the person Alente hates so deeply is not Aislinn at all. Derek says it clearly, so she cannot run from it. The person Alente truly despises is herself and not Aislinn. He explains that this fight is not born from petty jealousy. It is her own despair rising from self-hatred and a deep feeling of inferiority. Our boy makes his decision and tells her plainly to win then. Derek locks eyes with Alente and tells her that he will make sure she defeats Lady Aislinn. Golden fields stretch beneath a wide open sky as a carriage rolls through the countryside toward a grand estate. The carriage pulls up to the gate and someone steps out and announces that they have arrived. Velmer, who is Alente's magic teacher, stands before the entrance of the Belmard family home. A location card appears for Belmard County at Belmard Mansion. Count Belmiard rushes forward to greet Velmer as he returns from Ebelstein, and one calls out to welcome him back. Velmer straightens his posture and greets Count Belmard warmly. He says he trusts the Count has been well. Count Belmard waves Velmar inside and tells him to sit down after such a long journey. A name card introduces him as Count Belmard, whose full name is Tristan Anelt Belmard. The Count leans forward with a fond smile and says it has been ages since he last sees his treasure Elente. He asks if she has been doing well in Ebelstein. Velmar confirms that she has been concentrating on magic training even more than usual lately. Belmard beams with pride and declares that he has never seen a young lady with talent like his Elente. He adds that she will surely surpass even himself someday. Velmar nods carefully and says he hopes so as well. He mentions that he hears she has been learning from a commoner recently. The Count raises an eyebrow at the news but shifts topics quickly. He tells Velmar that he has some business in Ebelstein soon. A mischievous sparkle crosses the Count's face as he asks what Velmar thinks about going to find Elente himself and giving her a surprise gift. Velmar freezes on the spot because he is completely blindsided by the suggestion. Velmar stammers that yes, she would be very delighted. He wonders privately if that will really be all right. Under a night sky outskirts of Ebelstein at Nameless Labyrinth, Helene mutters that she is still not sure about this. She asks if it is really okay to take Lady Elente into a labyrinth. Jason assures her that Derek must have a plan. Elente herself asks in disbelief if they really expect her to go into the labyrinth on her own. She wonders aloud whether the lowest-ranked labyrinth nearby has anything too difficult inside. She presses further and asks what exactly she is supposed to do in there and whether it is truly safe to just walk in. Our boy explains that Elente needs to develop her instincts through real combat experience. He adds that he and his colleagues will be accompanying her just in case anything goes wrong. Elente stares at him and asks if he is seriously serious. Derek points out that the sparring match is only a few days away. He tells her that when someone is short on time, this is the best method available. Elente falls silent and processes the reality of what she is about to do. The group steps inside the labyrinth and Elente groans and asks what all of this is. The young man tells her to stay alert and reminds her that even a low-rank labyrinth can still be dangerous. Dark corridors stretch ahead of them as the air grows thick with tension. The group moves cautiously through the shadows. Pauline calls out that there are several goblins ahead. Elente's eyes go wide as she sputters in shock. Derek stays perfectly calm and confirms that he hears them too. Jason shouts a second warning that there is a big one deeper inside and it is possibly an ogre. Elente nearly screams at the word ogre. The guy glances at Elente and asks if she can handle it at this point. He adds with a dry half-smile that it depends on how much extra he is earning for this. Someone tells him they will calculate that after they survive. Terror locks every muscle in Elente's body as she whispers that they are real monsters. Goblins charge forward out of the darkness with fangs bared and weapons raised. Derek and Pelham spring into action immediately. Elente watches in stunned silence as real combat erupts around her. The young man tears through the goblins with his blade and each swing is precise and efficient. Pauline fights alongside him and cuts down monsters from the flank. Our boy drives his sword through another goblin without breaking stride. The battle rages deeper into the labyrinth as more enemies swarm toward them. Derek unleashes fire magic and scorches the horde closing in around them. Pauline dodges a strike and counters with her blade to hold the line. The fighting intensifies as the monsters refuse to back down. Elente can only watch from behind and her breath is ragged with fear as bodies pile up. She stumbles and hits the ground hard. A massive ogre emerges from the deeper corridors and towers over everyone. The ogre roars and swings its fist down at Jason. He clashes with the ogre head-on and the impact shakes the labyrinth walls around them. The ogre's attack sends shockwaves rippling through the corridor. Blood spatters across the stone floor as the fight grows more brutal. Elente's face drains of all color and she whispers to herself, asking what is happening. Panic tears through Elente's voice as she stammers that they are really trying to kill her and that she could actually die here. She repeats to herself over and over that this cannot be real. Derek's voice cuts through the chaos as he shouts her name. A monster is heading straight for her, and he tells her to stay focused. She snaps out of her spiral and sees the creature bearing down on her. The monster lunges toward her as Elente freezes in its path. Her mind races as panic consumes her and she tells herself she is going to die. She repeats it again and her voice cracks under the weight of real terror. Derek's voice thunders through the darkness and he tells her she needs to kill it. Then something shifts inside Alenti and she screams back that she needs to kill the version of herself that exists until now. Her golden eyes blaze with a fire that was never there before, and she screams that she admits all of it. She admits every bit of how ignorant and foolish she has been. The question she carries since chapter 17 echoes again. Alenti asks herself why the inferiority complex never goes away and searches for the answer. She has built nothing on her own, and all she ever does is envy others and tear them down. Alenti channels ice magic through both hands and fires a devastating blast directly at the monster charging her. She declares that she comes here to kill that version of herself and become stronger. Derek watches her from behind with his red eyes glowing as the magic tears through the creature. Jason and Pelline stand to the side in silence and watch everything unfold. Alenti finishes off the monster and stands amid the aftermath, gasping for air. The young man stays nearby and his expression is unreadable. She stands tall with golden eyes full of resolve and declares that she has finally taken one step forward. The confidence in her voice carries the weight of someone who truly changes from the inside out. The labyrinth falls quiet around her. Our boy watches her in silence, and a faint acknowledgement crosses his face. Alenti stands with her shoulders back and her golden eyes burning. She repeats her words with absolute certainty and says she has finally taken one step forward. A letter from Katya Flameheart opens with a warm greeting to her dear Sandra. Katya mentions it has been over 2 years since she left Ebelstein and apologizes for reaching out so late. She explains that these days she is teaching magic to the young lady of Elvester County, and the student has such a passion for learning that it makes the work truly enjoyable. Katya reflects that looking back, the days when she was teaching Derek and Ebelstein were difficult but so much freer and more enjoyable. With deep sincerity filling every line, Katya writes that of all the mages she has encountered in her lifetime, none have left a mark quite like Derek. Katya tells him that she is the most talented mage Katya has ever met. She asks what level Derek has reached by now, and insists that when they meet again someday, he must show her magic. The letter closes with a simple signature from her former teacher, Katya Flameheart. Our boy sits quietly with the letter in his hands, and his expression is calm but thoughtful as he reads over the familiar words once more. Alenti mentions that it has already been 2 weeks since she started coming here for training. She points out that Derek reads that letter whenever he has free time and asks what it is. The young man replies that it is a letter from his teacher. Alentia's eyes brighten with interest, and she remarks that Katya must be quite an excellent teacher considering she has the character to teach someone like Derek. Our boy confirms that Katya is an excellent teacher indeed. She hesitates and admits she is trying to believe something Derek keeps telling her. The guy asks her what she means, but Alenti quickly waves it off and tells him to never mind. Alenti admits she is not entirely sure how she feels about it, but there is one thing she knows. Derek says she will win. The weight of his words hangs in the air, and Alenti's golden eyes gleam with quiet determination as the duel draws closer. Alenti declares with fire in her voice that she will win. Footsteps echo across the Noble District magic sparring arena as a familiar figure makes her entrance. Iselin steps forward through the crowd with a polite request for people to let her through. Iselin rushes over and is delighted to see Derek. She tells him it is so good to see him again. The young man greets her back and notes it has been a while. The lady mentions that people are saying Alenti has been training intensely with her mage. She asks if he has surely not been too harsh on Alenti, and adds that Yahello mentioned that Derek is not an ordinary teacher. Iselin points out that lately Alenti looks quite tired as well and wonders if the training is pushing her too hard. She then notes that Derek seems confident about the outcome. The crowd stirs as the spectators discuss the upcoming match and its likely outcome. A wave of curiosity sweeps through the audience as they wonder who will take the win today. The consensus among the spectators leans toward Iselin. Others express sympathy for Alenti, and one spectator murmurs that it is a shame such a talented young lady has to face someone as overwhelming as Iselin in her current state. The chatter fades into tense silence as the two duelists prepare to take the stage, and all eyes in the arena lock onto the arena floor. Footsteps ring across the arena floor as Iselin makes her grand entrance toward the dueling stage. The crowd erupts the moment they see her. One spectator gasps and calls out that it is young lady Iselin. Another wonders aloud how she manages to look this stunning every single time. Iselin's presence commands the entire arena, and her dark hair flows behind her as she walks with unshakable composure. On the other side, Alenti mutters to herself over and over that she will win. She continues repeating the words, and each time she presses the phrase deeper into her own heart. Alenti throws her head back with blazing resolve and roars that she is absolutely winning this match today. Both duelists take their positions on the arena floor, and the tension between them is almost visible in the air. Iseline opens with a composed greeting and tells Alenti that she hopes she has been well. Alenti returns the courtesy and asks if Iseline has also been well. She smiles and adds that Iseline's composure at all times sets an example for her. Iseline's eyes soften for just a moment before she steadies herself. She answers plainly with a single word of denial. She confesses that she feels more nervous right now than she ever has before any duel. A brief silence passes between them before one of them asks if they should begin. Both duelists raise their magic and prepare to clash, and their stances shift into combat-ready positions. The duel explodes into motion as Iseline and Alenti launch their magic at the same time. Iseline fires her ice magic while Alenti counters with a burst of flame. Fire and ice collide across the arena in a violent exchange, and neither side gives an inch. Alenti's fire magic intensifies and floods the stage with a storm of golden flames that pushes against Iseline's barrier. Her fire magic rains down from above in a golden barrage that blankets the arena. The golden flames intensify even further and hammer the arena with wave after wave of fire that shows no sign of stopping. Iseline stares across the burning arena and thinks to herself that she has no idea Alenti is this strong. Alenti's fire continues to surge outward, and wave after wave of flame crashes across the stage as she pushes every last drop of mana into her attack. The arena is consumed by Alenti's golden fire, and the heat and light overwhelm everything in sight as her full power is finally on display. The flames roar higher and wider and cover the entire stage in a sea of fire that forces spectators to step back from the railing. Iseline steadies herself and murmurs that despite everything she is not done yet. Her own mana surges as ice magic begins to form around her. Her eyes sharpen with fierce determination, and she unleashes her ice magic in a massive counterwave that clashes head-on against Alenti's fire. The collision of ice and flame tears across the arena. Both Iseline and Alenti lock eyes through the storm of fire and ice, and each one declares with everything she has that she is the one who will win. The duel between Iseline and Alenti rages on as fire and ice collide across the arena. A spectator gasps and stammers that this is Lady Alenti's magic. Alenti's eyes blaze with determination as she pours wave after wave of golden fire across the stage, and refuses to let up for even a second. Iseline fires back with a wall of ice magic that cuts through the flames and pushes the exchange into a stalemate that neither side is willing to break. Iseline reads the situation calmly and notes that while Alenti's performance is incredible, she is just blindly pouring out attacks without a real strategy. She adds that at this rate, Alenti's mana will be completely depleted in no time. Her eyes lock onto an opening, and she calls out that she has found her target. Iseline surges forward and declares that it is her turn now. She addresses Alenti by name as she prepares to strike. She launches a piercing ice attack straight at Alenti and closes the gap between them in an instant. The ice magic tears across the arena with enough force to send shockwaves rippling through the air around both fighters. Her ice attack connects and slams into Alenti and sends her reeling backward across the stage. But something is clearly wrong with this hit. Alenti's body flickers and distorts on impact, and the hit does not land the way Iseline expects. Her eyes go wide in pure shock as she realizes what Alenti is doing and stammers that Alenti is using illusion magic. Iseline's mind races as she processes the implications. She notes that to move illusions like that would consume an enormous amount of mana, and that makes it a reckless move for anyone in the middle of a duel. Before Iseline can recover, Alenti is already repositioning behind the cover of her illusions and preparing her next move. Iseline reacts in a split second and gasps that Alenti is firing ice spears at this distance. She realizes there is no time to deploy protective magic. With her back against the wall, Iseline grits her teeth and decides she has no choice but to take the hit head-on. Iseline braces herself and pushes through because she is determined to survive the close-range barrage through sheer willpower alone. The ice spears slam into Iseline with devastating force, and the impact shakes the entire stage as the audience holds its breath. The smoke begins to clear, and Alenti stares ahead, waiting to see if her attack landed cleanly. Iseline slides backward from the impact but manages to stay on her feet. She is battered but not broken. The two exchange another rapid volley of magic at close range, and fire and ice crash into each other between them. Alente freezes mid-attack as she notices something strange about Aisline's magic. She mutters to herself and asks what that is. A new kind of energy begins swirling around Aisline, and it is something different from anything Alente has seen from her before. Aisline's expression sharpens with newfound clarity, and she tells herself that she finally understands what Derek means by that warning. She notes that in terms of skill and her way of applying magic, everything about Alente has completely changed from before. Aisline steadies her stance and decides that if Alente has changed this much, then she will match that change with everything she has. She declares that she will also push forward with firepower and meet Alente blow for blow. With absolute conviction in her voice, Aisline announces that she is confident in an exchange of raw power and unleashes a massive wave of ice magic across the arena. Hundreds of ice spears materialize in the air above Aisline and rain down across the stage in a breathtaking display of magical firepower. The spectators gasp in awe. One murmurs in disbelief and another asks if all of those are ice spears. Someone adds that producing that many without incantations is beyond anything a normal mage should be capable of. The guy watches from the stands and his red eyes gleam. A calm smile crosses his face as he notes to himself that Aisline has taken the bait. Alente's eyes narrow through the storm of ice and her body is already moving before the barrage even ends. Aisline acknowledges mid-fight that Alente has achieved remarkable growth and deserves recognition for how far she has come. But recognition does not slow her down, and Aisline follows up her barrage with another punishing strike aimed directly at Alente. Aisline roars at Alente to try blocking this attack as well and launches her strongest ice spell yet. She pours every ounce of remaining mana into the strike. Alente's golden eyes flare as fire ignites around her fists, and she prepares to answer Aisline's all-out assault with one of her own. Fire and ice collide in a devastating explosion that engulfs the entire stage and blinds the audience with its intensity. Through the chaos, a single flame arrow streaks forward and cuts through the smoke and ice debris on a direct path toward Aisline. Aisline's eyes catch the incoming flame arrow at the last possible moment, and shock flashes across her face. She stammers in disbelief and demands to know since when Alente can use flame arrows. She asks where that attack even comes from. She realizes with growing alarm that she cannot sense any spell incantation or mana flow behind the flame arrow. That means Alente hid it from her completely. Aisline's jaw drops as the full picture becomes clear. She realizes that Alente prepared for this moment from the very beginning of the fight, and the hidden arrow is a trap she never sees coming. Aisline stands amid the fading smoke, and her expression is tight with frustration. She admits to herself that she simply cannot read Alente anymore. She adds that she has no idea what move Alente will pull next, and for the first time in the duel, genuine uncertainty fills her voice. The spectators erupt in stunned chatter. One asks what is happening, and another points out that the two are fighting on completely equal footing now. A third calls it quite impressive. Alente's heart pounds as the realization hits her. She thinks to herself that this is definitely doable, and wonders in disbelief whether she is actually overpowering Aisline right now. On the other side of the arena, Aisline's thoughts turn cold and decisive. She admits she cannot win under these conditions, while a spectator notes that, in terms of tactics and boldness, Alente is a step ahead. Her body tenses as she makes her decision. She thinks to herself that if these conditions do not work in her favor, then she will simply change them. Aisline's blue eyes sharpen with terrifying focus, and she declares that she will reset the conditions from the very start and take back control of this fight. The air around the arena begins to shift as Aisline draws on power she has never tapped before. The young man's red eyes gleam from the stands, and he murmurs to himself that this is where the real fight begins. Aisline's mana explodes outward in a massive surge that sends shockwaves rippling across the entire arena floor. She rises into the air, surrounded by a vortex of ice magic so intense that the temperature around the arena drops in an instant. Alente stares up at Aisline, and something feels deeply wrong. A wave of confusion crosses her face. Aisline's magic surges higher and wider, and the ice vortex expands far beyond anything she has shown in the duel so far. Alente gasps and asks herself what the wind around her is. She notes that it does not feel like magic and wonders if what she is sensing is raw mana pouring through the arena. Aislinn has exceeded her own limits in this very moment and broken past the ceiling that once defined her power. The result speaks for itself. A two-star fireball takes shape above the arena, and it is massive and blinding. Its heat washes over every spectator in the stands as the true depth of Aislinn's power reveals itself. The crowd erupts in shock. One spectator stammers and asks if that could really be fire magic. Another gasps and demands to know if that is truly a fireball, and a two-star one at that. Panic ripples through the audience as spectators cry out in disbelief. The sheer scale of the fireball is beyond anything they expect from this match. Alente whips around toward the stands and her voice cracks with panic as she screams at Derek. She tells him to tell her what this is and what she is supposed to do. Our boy stares back at her in complete silence, and his face betrays nothing. Fury and fear twist across Alente's face as she snaps at Derek. She roars at him to stop making that stupid face and to tell her something useful. She calls him a fraud. The two-star fireball crashes down toward the arena floor, and Alente throws herself sideways to avoid the impact. Her mind races as she tries to find a counter. She asks herself how she is supposed to block a two-star spell with protective magic and realizes that an ice barrier will not work either. Despair floods through Alente's chest, and she tells herself that she knows deep down that defeating Aislinn is simply impossible. Alente's voice drops to a whisper as the weight of her own doubt crushes her. She murmurs that someone like her could never win. The fireball descends on the arena and its heat washes over the entire stage as Alente stands frozen beneath it. Her spirit is on the verge of breaking. The fireball tears into Alente's position with a deafening explosion that sends shockwaves rippling through the stands. Smoke and debris fill the arena as the audience shields their eyes, and for a long moment nobody can see what is left on the stage. Heavy breathing breaks through the silence. Someone is still standing among the wreckage and gasping for air. Aislinn's eyes go wide as she stares through the fading smoke at the arena floor. Her composure cracks for the first time. She stammers in disbelief and asks herself whether Alente actually manages to dodge that attack. Shock deepens in Aislinn's voice as she realizes Alente uses the exact same dodging method that Aislinn herself uses. It is a technique Alente has only seen a single time before this fight. Alente's golden eyes sharpen as everything clicks into place. She tells herself that she finally understands what Derek is thinking all along. Fire swirls around Alente's fists as resolve floods back into her body. She declares that if she can just endure this onslaught, she will win. Aislinn grits her teeth and fires back with a burst of flame magic again. She lets out a pained roar as the impact tears through both fighters. The exchange of fire and ice crashes across the arena in a violent collision that shakes the ground beneath them. A spectator cries out in shock and asks if Aislinn is really firing another fireball. The spectator's voice rises higher as she notes that this second fireball is so much faster than the first one. The fireball streaks across the arena at blinding speed and gives Alente almost no time to react as it closes the gap between them. Alente twists her body at the last possible instant and narrowly avoids a direct hit as the fireball scorches the air beside her. The exchange reaches its peak as ice and fire collide in midair. A voice explains that Aislinn uses manifested magic instead of ignited spells, and that she drains all of her mana by casting and controlling two fireballs back to back. She darts through the air and thinks to herself that if she moves like this, then Aislinn will not be able to read her attack's trajectory. She adds that using a protective barrier at this point will only waste whatever mana Aislinn has left. Alente locks her eyes on Aislinn and demands to know what she will do now. She calls Aislinn by name as she launches her attack. She responds with a desperate ice counter and summons a massive frozen spear that tears forward to meet Aislinn's assault head-on. The impact sends Aislinn sliding across the arena floor, and her body is barely holding together after absorbing the force of Alente's blow. Silence fills the arena for a single breathless moment as the smoke hangs between the two fighters. She continues in a strained whisper and pleads for her body to give her just a little bit more strength. Confidence surges through Alente as she tells herself there is no way Aislinn has any mana left. She checks her own reserves and confirms she can still cast basic arrows or ice spears. Alente counts at least 2 more spells in her reserves and tells herself that is more than enough. Her voice rises with emotion as she declares that she has defeated Iseline. Iseline's final attack streaks toward Alenti and cuts through the smoke with deadly precision. The arena falls completely silent as everyone holds their breath. From somewhere deep inside, Iseline's lips move again. She whispers one more time and begs, please, just one more. She asks whatever strength remains to give her just a bit more. Something shifts in the air and a ripple of shock runs through the crowd as Iseline's body begins to stir. Alenti freezes and her eyes are fixed on Iseline in stunned silence. Across the arena, a single blue eye gleams through the smoke with a light that refuses to die. Alenti looks at Iseline across the arena and sees the noble and beautiful Lady Duplain with disheveled hair and covered in dust. Iseline is rolling on the ground in front of all these people without a shred of shame. Her voice catches in her throat as she asks how Iseline can make a face like that after everything. It is as if losing her composure means nothing at all. A quiet realization settles over Alenti and she murmurs that Iseline simply does not have an image of herself that she needs to protect. That freedom is something Alenti has never known. Alenti's thoughts soften as she admits that Iseline always just does her best at what she has to do without pretense or calculation. The crowd erupts around the arena and screams for Iseline to hang in there. They tell her she can do it and beg her to get up. The cheering grows louder as the entire audience rallies behind Iseline with every ounce of their voices. Alenti's mind flashes back to before the match, and she calls out to Derek by name. Her voice is quiet and serious. She asks Derek if she can really beat Iseline. Our boy answers without hesitation that she will win. Alenti snaps back to the present moment, and she is standing on the arena floor. She tells herself with calm finality that so this is it. A heavy truth settles over Alenti mid-fight, and she realizes that even if she wins this battle, then in the end nothing will change. She will just be stuck here and trapped in the same hollow abyss she has been drowning in all her life. Iseline launches one more ice attack and lets out a casual sigh. She calls out a light-hearted "oh dear" as if the whole fight is just another day. Alenti's body goes completely still as the truth catches up to her. She admits quietly that she has run out of mana. A stunned voice asks for clarification because they cannot believe what Alenti just says. The arena falls into confused silence as the words sink in for everyone watching. Alenti straightens her posture and accepts her fate with grace. She tells the crowd that, as expected, she is no match for Lady Iseline. Alenti bows her head and declares clearly that it is her defeat. She adds that it is a good sparring session. The crowd explodes into deafening cheers and spectators scream that Iseline is so cool. Their voices shake the walls of the arena. Alenti stands across from Iseline as the noise fades into the background. Both fighters are battered but standing, and the weight of the match settles between them. Noble ladies swarm around Iseline with congratulations, and one asks excitedly when she learns 2-star magic. Her attention snaps away from the crowd as something else catches her eye. The nobles continue gushing that this spar is incredible, and their voices overlap with excitement. Iseline turns and calls out to Alenti by name. Her voice cuts through the noise with a weight that silences everyone nearby. Alenti finds Derek waiting for her. He asks if she sees it clearly, and she confirms that she does. The young man notes that she must be surprised, and Alenti replies that she is someone who knows how to admit defeat too. He then tells her she should have seen Iseline's face. Alenti leans in with curiosity and asks him what he means by that. Our boy describes how Iseline's eyes go so wide during the fight that her face could not have expressed the feeling of being impressed any more clearly. Alenti's jaw drops slightly as she processes that. She marvels that even the always composed Iseline can make a face like that and calls it a sight to behold. She thanks Derek for giving her the chance to see something like that. Her energy surges with pride, and she declares that she even gets to feel a sense of superiority over Iseline. She says she feels so great today. Alenti pushes further and asks Derek how her performance is. She admits the ending is a bit of a shame, but insists she is not bad at all. She adds that she is a pretty fast learner. Alenti waves her hand and warns Derek not to try to find fault for no reason. But the guy cuts her off with a look that makes her stop mid-sentence. Derek steps closer to Alenti, and his red eyes are steady and unreadable. They hold a weight she has not seen from him before. Warmth floods through Alenti's chest without warning, and she stammers. She tells herself this feeling is strange and that she is not a child anymore. The young man tells Alenti plainly that she is flawlessly excellent. He adds simply that she does well, and the sincerity in his voice leaves no room for doubt. Elenti falls quiet for a long moment. Then she admits honestly that she wants to win. Our boy listens as Elenti opens up. She confesses that just as she is about to end the fight, she sees something that stops her. She realizes that even if she wins, she will still be in the same place. And she adds that she will just go back to that miserable place again. It is the same hollow abyss she has been trapped in for years. Her voice drops lower as she admits that she realizes this is simply the kind of person she is. Even in the middle of all that chaos, Azaleen looks noble and untouchable. Elenti lets out a bitter laugh and says she supposes she is superior to Azaleen in just one thing, and that is the size of her inferiority complex. Elenti's composure cracks as she insists she is not any different from the person she has always been. The silence that follows says more than words ever could. The young man responds quietly and asks what it matters if she looks a little pathetic. She looks up at him, and her golden eyes are wide with surprise. The words catch her completely off guard. Derek tells her that if she does not have the courage to look pathetic, she can never get any better. His voice carries the weight of someone who knows exactly what that means. Elsewhere, noble ladies bid farewell to Azaleen. One tells her they will be going now and says the spar is exhilarating. Azaleen thanks them with a gentle nod. Denise approaches Azaleen with glowing praise and declares that Azaleen has achieved yet another accomplishment. She confesses she has goosebumps the entire time watching. Azaleen goes quiet for a moment. Then she turns to Denise and asks if she knows the truth. She admits plainly that she does not win this sparring match. Denise falls silent because she is unsure how to respond. Azaleen holds her gaze without flinching, and her expression is perfectly serious. Denise continues and states that in terms of magic capacity, she thinks her is far superior. She starts to object and points out that surely the difference in capacity is not enough to offset her advantages. Azaleen shakes her head and refuses to accept the compliment. She tells Denise clearly that Elenti is ahead of her in every way during this fight. Her blue eyes shimmer with deep emotion as she adds that for someone to advance that much in such a short period of time is beyond anything she imagines possible. Azaleen turns to her maid and calls out the name Daisy in a steady voice. She must send a letter to the main house right away. Aizlin's eyes lock forward with absolute certainty as she declares what she needs from the main house. She needs Derek. Grand Duke Veltis asks what a 6-star travel pass is doing in their city and notes that such a document belongs to someone of extraordinary importance. Valerian explains that the reason is unclear, but the customs agreement seems to have been moved up earlier. This is likely in response to Drest's movements across the region. Grand Duke Duplin hums quietly to himself. He mentions that he wonders why the Count of Belmard is coming to Ebelstein of all places, and adds that it seems that matter also has something to do with Drest. The Grand Duke continues and notes that if Drest is someone at the very pinnacle of search-type magic, and a mage who possesses true foresight, then there must be a deeper reason behind his movements. Valerian reports that a letter has arrived from Azaleen. He explains that she has sent a request to find her a magic teacher. The Grand Duke raises an eyebrow and asks if they cannot simply find a teacher for her locally. Valerian hesitates before explaining that the problem is Azaleen specifically asks for Derek. He adds that there is a complication because the guy is currently at the Belmard estate teaching magic to Lady Elenti. Grand Duke Veltis thinks it over and mentions that he is considering sending their butler to actively lead the negotiations on Azaleen's behalf. Valerian shakes his head and tells his father that there is no need for that. He explains that he has to go to Ebelstein anyway because of the Drest matter and says he will handle the Derek situation while he is there. The view shifts to the Belmard estate at sunset and Elenti flops down. She tells Derek she is going to rest for a while. Elenti stretches and announces that studies or whatever else can wait because she needs a break to clear her head. The exhaustion from weeks of training and the emotional weight of the duel finally catches up to her as she sinks into a chair. She asks Derek if he is going to keep working for the Beldon Mercenary Corps, and the young man confirms that he supposes so. Elenti calls his name and tosses something toward him without warning. Her golden eyes lock onto his as she asks him directly whether he will come again if she calls for him. She specifically means to teach her magic. Our boy goes quiet for a long moment before answering that of course he will come. He adds honestly that he is not sure if there is anything left for him to teach her at this point. Elenti scoffs and asks what is with the uncharacteristic humility coming from someone like him. Elenti glances at the sky and notes that winter is finally coming to an end. She adds that it is a long one, and she turns back to Derek and asks if it is not a long winter for him too. Her voice carries a warmth she does not bother to hide. Footsteps echo across a familiar cobblestone street as the view shifts to Ebelstein. The door to Beldun's tier swings open and a voice cries out Derek's name in surprise. Our boy steps through the doorway with a calm expression and announces simply that he is back. Carriage wheels rattle along a countryside road as a black carriage makes its way toward the Belmard estate. Inside the carriage, Count Belmard sits with his arms folded and his red hair matches his daughter's perfectly. At the estate, Alente lies in bed with her eyes closed and groans that she keeps telling everyone she is resting. She insists that starting today there are absolutely no lessons. A maid nervously interrupts and stammers that there is something Lady Alente really needs to come out and see. Alente buries her face in her pillow and completely ignores the request. Before she can finish her protest, a booming voice fills the room. A man cheerfully greets her and calls it a long time since they last meet. Count Belmard throws his arms wide and calls Alente his pride and his jewel and his treasure. His face glows with the unconstrained joy of a doting father. Alente freezes completely and her eyes go wide with shock as she asks herself why her father is here. She forces a laugh and asks her father what brings him all the way out here. Then she scrambles to excuse herself to change clothes. Count Belmard reaches out with both arms and calls her his love and his jewel as Alente slams the door shut in his face. Silence settles over the room. Later over tea, Count Belmard brings up the duel and notes that the young lady of Duplain surely is not an easy opponent. Alente sips her tea and answers that Azaline is tough, but she learns a lot from the experience. Count Belmard leans back with a thoughtful expression and remarks that if that mercenary fellow teaches this well, it would be best to keep him exclusively at Belmard. Alente stammers and warns her father that the vassals will oppose such a decision. She knows how controversial it is to hire a commoner permanently. Count Belmard laughs off her concern and tells her not to worry. He asks if there is anything he would not do for his daughter and insists that she just trust her father. The view shifts to a stone gate at the entrance of a labyrinth as the light fades to evening. Inside, Derek fights through a swarm of monsters when a voice screams his name and warns him to watch his back. The young man spins around just in time as an attack comes from behind, and his body moves on pure instinct. His eyes go wide as he feels something shift inside his body. It is a sensation he has never felt at this intensity before. Shock flashes across his face as a burst of unfamiliar power surges through his mana circuits. Derek's red eyes ignite as raw energy explodes from his body. The air around him crackles with a force that dwarfs anything he has cast before. Derek unleashes a massive firewall that tears across the dungeon corridor, and the flames swallow everything in their path. Piline screams Derek's name from behind as the firewall roars outward with devastating power. It barely misses her and shakes the entire structure. The sunset paints the sky over Ebelstein as the evening settles in after the mission. At Beldun's tier, Piline demands to know if it is true that Derek nearly dies. She asks if all mages are like this and complains about why anyone would try a 3-star spell while hunting goblins. Derek leans against the wall and explains that he feels a strange sense of incongruity in the middle of the fight. It is the same kind of feeling as when he first reaches 2-star. He tells himself quietly that there is no need to be anxious about being stuck because the breakthrough will come on its own. Dressed Wolftail appears before Derek, and his presence is almost impossible to detect. He tells Derek that there is no need to force his way through to 3-star, and asks if the School of the Wild does not naturally pursue a natural flow. He adds with a dry smile that of course such advice usually does not work on mages like Derek since they rarely listen. Derek remarks that he certainly cannot feel even a trace of mana from the person standing before him, but his eyes tell him that this person is without question something remarkable. Dressed identifies himself as the first and greatest 6-star search-type mage and casually asks if Derek has any decent alcohol. He complains that the fatigue from his travels has piled up. The night sky stretches over the Duplain estate as moonlight bathes the courtyard in silver light. A lone figure trains in the courtyard, and her blonde hair catches the moonlight as ice magic crackles from her fingertips. It is Yahello practicing alone in the dark. Her magic surges and snaps as she pushes herself harder. Blue energy spirals around her hands. Her concentration breaks as something unexpected happens, and a flash of surprise crosses her face. Yahello screams in frustration and yells about what the heck is going on. She calls the whole thing annoying. A familiar voice cuts through the darkness. Raig steps out of the shadows and remarks that he thinks Diella has grown up a bit, but her temper is exactly the same as always. Raig asks if this progress is thanks to having a good teacher. Diella puffs up with pride and insists that it is because she is talented. She demands to know what that selfish fellow Derek has to do with any of it. Raig drops the news casually and mentions that it seems Isley is planning to hire that selfish fellow as her magic teacher. Diella's composure shatters as she blurts out that there is no way. She asks what will happen if Isley gets treated the same harsh way she does. Raig tells Diella not to say things that make people misunderstand Derek. Then he mentions that he hears at a recent ball that Lady Alente also wants to keep employing him. Diella's jaw drops as she asks in disbelief why that guy is so popular with everyone. Raig answers flatly that Derek turns a rascal like Diella into a human being, so it is no wonder people want him. Diella flares up and demands to know who Raig is calling a rascal before catching herself. She quietly admits that she supposes she is one. Raig suggests that it might actually be better if Derek chooses Isolene, since that way Diella might be able to meet him again somehow. He notes how much she wants to see him. He adds that the rumors about Derek must have spread quite a bit by now, and that his name is becoming known across noble circles. Diella falls quiet for a moment, and her expression softens just barely beneath the bluster. The tavern door swings open, and the air in the room shifts instantly. Derek freezes and mutters the name Dressed Wolftail under his breath because he cannot believe who just walks in. Derek's voice drops to a whisper as he asks himself why a mage of this caliber is in a place like this. His disbelief is written all over his face. Dressed glances around the tavern with a tired but sharp expression and asks if the young man's name is Derek. Our boy confirms his name and immediately wonders to himself how Dressed already knows who he is. Dressed asks politely if it would be too much trouble for the two of them to talk for a moment and makes it clear he wants a private conversation. He adds that he means just the two of them, and the weight behind his words leaves no room for argument. Derek holds his gaze for a long and silent moment before agreeing without a word. Under the night sky, Dressed and Derek stand together on a quiet rooftop overlooking the city. Dressed opens with a blunt observation and tells Derek that his magic talent is far too ambiguous. He adds that he is sure Derek has never heard this before since his skills are quite outstanding on their own. Dressed leans forward and asks Derek directly why he works so hard and what he hopes to achieve by learning magic. The young man answers honestly and admits that he does not have any grand ambitions. He explains that he simply feels that since he has grasped even a thread of talent, he is curious to see how far he can go. Our boy's voice carries a quiet sincerity as he says he is simply curious to see how far and how much further he can push himself. Nothing more and nothing less. Dressed nods slowly and warns Derek that as a commoner dreaming of reaching a higher realm than where he stands now, he is a bit lacking as he is. Then Dress's expression shifts to something gentler, and he asks Derek if it would be all right for him to help. The weight of the offer hits Derek hard. His red eye gleams as the name echoes through his mind. A 6-star mage dressed Wolftail. Derek's thoughts race through everything he knows about the man standing before him. Born a commoner, Dressed reaches 2-star by the time he becomes an adult and 3-star by the time he starts a family. The commoner-born mage becomes a spiritual pillar for all commoners, and his village becomes an ivory tower where commoner mages gather and train. Then the year he reaches 4-star, everything changes. The memory takes a dark and violent turn. Rain hammers the roof of a small house as the sounds of violence tear through the night, and a young Dressed stands frozen in the doorway. The destruction stretches across every corner of his life. Everything Dressed builds is torn apart in a single night by those who refuse to let a commoner rise. A voice speaks over the memory and states the truth in a single line. He loses his family. Nobles sit comfortably in a manor drinking wine and discussing how Dressed has finally gone into hiding. One remarks that those arrogant commoner mages have quieted down too and calls them vulgar things who scare easily. Another noble sneers and questions why commoners are so greedy for magic in the first place, as if the very idea disgusts him. He adds that if Dress shows his face again, the consequences will be severe. But the threat never finishes. A shadow moves through the manor at impossible speed, and the noble barely manages to scream Dress' name before the blade finds him. Dress tears through the nobles one by one. His eyes burn with 30 years of grief compressed into a single night. The last noble alive falls to his knees and begs for mercy. He screams that he is sorry over and over, and his voice cracks with terror. Drest offers no response except the final strike, and the room falls silent. The narrator explains that after that night, Drest lives on the run from the imperial family and the nobility for 30 long years. He never stops and never settles. When Drest surpasses the 5-star realm and becomes a 6-star mage, the imperial family finally realizes that keeping him as an enemy will put the entire kingdom in danger. The imperial family acknowledges that Drest's revenge is justified and protects their own authority by granting him a noble title. That is how Drest becomes a man who receives a noble title solely through his magic prowess. Derek's mind returns to the present, and he asks himself in quiet awe whether he can truly be taught by such a man. His red eye burns with resolve as the answer comes to him instantly. There is no reason to refuse. The view shifts to the Ebelstein Noble District, where a formal meeting takes place in the Cleon Hall Central Conference Room. An official warns Grand Duke Duplain that if he plans to expand north of the Belkos Peninsula, he should be careful of the labyrinths in the White Zone. The official adds that if necessary, he can dispatch knights to assist with the operation. Grand Duke Veltus, whose full name is Andelof Kelika Veltus, he smiles thinly and asks whether the knights being offered are perhaps those lowly mercenaries. Grand Duke Veltus continues and notes that it must be difficult to manage such a vast territory with only private soldiers. He suggests that giving up the territory is also an option. Count Belmard steps in to break the tension with a laugh and notes that the meeting seems mostly wrapped up. He suggests Grand Duke Duplain go see his children, since he has come all the way to Ebelstein. Count Belmard adds that he hears Elente fights on par with Azaline. Grand Duke Duplain confirms that yes, she unfortunately loses, but it seems Elente is finally letting her talent bloom. He declares with confidence that, with a bit more training from a good instructor, Elente will surely surpass Lady Azaline. Grand Duke Duplain's expression darkens slightly as he fires back. He warns that on the contrary, if Derek were to become Izaline's instructor, then Elente will never be able to surpass Izaline. The air between them goes cold as the implication settles in. Count Belmard chuckles and waves it off. He says he wonders if such a thing will ever happen, since Derek's bond with Elente runs quite deep. Grand Duke Duplain responds flatly and asks if Belmard really thinks Derek is the type to move based on personal ties. He notes that Belmard has not grasped Derek's character at all. Grand Duke Veltus watches the exchange from the side, and his curiosity is finally piqued. He murmurs to himself and asks who this Derek even is that these two powerful men are so desperate to secure him. He decides to tell Denise to look into the matter. The Belden's tear sign comes into view once more as the front door swings open. Jason looks up from behind the counter and starts his usual welcome before freezing mid-sentence at the sight of who enters. Count Belmard steps into the tavern in full noble regalia and is flanked by attendants. He immediately asks if the person before him is the mercenary corps commander. He explains that since there is no reply to the letter his head butler sends, he has come in person to handle matters directly. Jason stammers an apology and tries to explain the situation as best he can. He admits that Derek has actually been missing for a few days. He adds that they have been asking around and searching for him as well. Jason explains that a few days ago, Derek says he is refusing all requests, and then he simply vanishes without a trace. Count Belmard's eyes narrow with suspicion, and he asks himself whether Duplain has already snatched Derek up. He considers Veltus before dismissing it for lack of information. Count Belmard's jaw tightens as he declares that he will have to find Derek himself. The view shifts to the outskirts of Ebelstein, where Grand Duke Veltus's residence stands. Inside, Denise sits in her room eating an apple and reading a book when a letter catches her attention. She asks when the letter arrives. A maid explains that it arrives early this morning and adds that the patriarch sends it with great urgency. Denise reads the letter aloud, and it instructs her to hurry and find the man named Derek and take him as her instructor. She muses that her grandfather must be in a hurry since Derek's value as a mercenary is at its lowest right now. She sighs and mutters that the whole thing is annoying because she is clearly not thrilled about being dragged into a recruitment mission. Denise stretches and reminds herself that today is supposed to be a very important day. It is a day she has been waiting for so long. Her face lights up with genuine excitement as she reveals what today really is. The new book by her favorite author Regeline is finally released, and it is a novel about the Lion King's Gold Grand Duke and something called the Ice Greatsword. She agonizes over the decision and wonders what exactly the Ice Greatsword is. She admits she is dying to find out, but she reluctantly concedes that if she does not listen to her grandfather now, he will just nag her even more later. Denise calls out to her maid by name. She says Bella. Bella responds promptly and awaits orders. Denise tells Bella to prepare her clothes because she is heading out. She declares that she has someone to find, and for the first time a hint of genuine interest flickers across her expression. Denise stands in the light of her window and her silver blue hair catches the morning sun. The hunt for Derek gains yet another competitor. A dark forest stretches beneath a starlit sky and sets the mood for what is to come. Dressed instructs Derek to close his eyes and release his mana in a thin ray. He explains that Derek should feel the mana as it touches objects and bounces back. He continues and notes that from 2-star onward, a mage can track locations and detect different races. Green mana flows outward from Derek as he practices the technique with his eyes closed in concentration. A massive magic circle fills the air around them. Dressed's voice carries weight as he explains that at 3-star, a mage can see through disguises, and at 4-star is when one can see through their opponent entirely. Dressed goes even further up the scale. At 5-star, he says a mage can read minds and communicate with the dead. And lastly, at 6-star, one gains the ability to see the future. The young man repeats the words back almost in disbelief. He asks if Dressed truly means he can see the future. Dressed's eyes carry the weight of someone who has seen too much. He confirms it without hesitation and explains that he saw the future and came specifically to find Derek because he needs him. Our boy asks what exactly is going to happen to him. Dressed asks if Derek knows a man named Valerian, and confirms that Valerian is the eldest son of House Duplain. Dressed's expression grows dark as he reveals that before Derek reaches adulthood, Valerian will dabble in necromancy. He pauses and then adds 2 simple words. That is why. Derek's red eyes stare back in silence and his expression is unreadable as the weight of Dressed's words settles over him. He presses for more and asks why Valerian would dabble in necromancy and what exactly the man is planning. Dressed apologizes and explains that he cannot share more details. He warns that this is how the future works, and if Derek learns everything prematurely, the consequences multiply. A flicker of frustration crosses his face, and he explains that knowing too much will make the outcome even more uncertain and cause things to change in complex ways. Dressed steadies himself and tells Derek that there is one more thing he can share. He says it flatly. Derek is destined to die. Silence hangs between them, but our boy does not flinch. Dressed notes with surprise that Derek does not seem very shocked by this. The guy responds calmly and points out that Dressed uses the word destined and not that he would definitely die. Dressed lets out a breath and confirms Derek is correct. He adds quietly that he does not wish for Derek to die either. His voice hardens with purpose as he tells Derek that he must not die and that Dressed will make certain of it. His voice hardens with purpose as he tells Derek that he must not die and that he will make certain of it. Dressed gathers energy between his hands and the air around them shifts. He tells Derek that to survive he will have to become strong. He swings his staff downward, and a crescent of blue energy tears across the cave. The raw force of it is staggering. Dressed finishes his sentence and says overwhelmingly so. A massive vortex of dark energy spirals outward from where Dressed stands and swallows the space around them. 2 silhouettes stand against a blinding sphere of light. The sheer scale of Dressed's power paints the entire landscape in blue. The young man stares wide-eyed at the aftermath. His face is lit by the fading glow of 6-star magic he has never witnessed before. A quiet European-style town sits under a daytime sky. Its cobblestone streets are busy with people going about their business, and a horse-drawn carriage rolls to a stop. A pair of shoes steps down onto the cobblestones as someone exits the carriage. Denise steps onto the street in full view, and her silver blue hair catches the light as she takes in her surroundings with calm curiosity. She tells her attendant that she will walk from here and instructs him to stay and rest. The man bows and replies with a respectful acknowledgement. Denise calls out to Bella as she walks ahead. Her brow furrows with genuine confusion, and she asks why everyone on the street keeps staring at her. Bella thinks it over for a moment and murmurs that she wonders why. She tilts her head and suggests that it could be because of something. Denise's eyes sparkle as she arrives at her own conclusion and asks if it is because she is pretty. Bella informs Denise that her room is ready and adds with concern that Denise barely slept. She notes that Denise just lies around in a reading room, which is quite a sight compared to her usual self. He tells Denise she finds her even more adorable when she is like this. Denise waves the compliment off and tells Bella she is good at joking. Bella responds flatly that she was not joking. A spark of urgency enters Bella's voice as she asks if they should hurry because another house might take the man named Derek first. Denise reassures her not to worry and insists that even at her pace she is still faster than the others. Bella remarks that Denise always speaks so boldly. She then asks about the mercenary who supposedly rejected all noble requests and went into hiding. She presses whether Denise even knows him. Denise corrects Bella and explains that the mercenary is not hiding at all. She reasons that he is simply doing something far more important than taking jobs. Her expression sharpens as her mind races. She wonders aloud whether Derek has reached a level of magic that even nobles struggle to push past. If something more important than money presents itself to a mage, she reasons the answer has to be magic itself. Denise continues the thought and reasons that Derek may have found a great teacher. If that is the case, he would have no time for mercenary work, so of course he would reject requests. But she catches herself and notes that the mercenary left the Duplin mansion of his own accord. Denise points out to herself that there is no better place to train magic than the Duplin mansion. Her eyes go wide as the pieces fall into place. She murmurs that this means Derek found something even better than the Duplin mansion and wonders if it could be what she thinks it is. Bella announces that they have arrived. Denise snaps out of her thoughts and blinks. Jason stands at the entrance of the wooden building and greets them with a casual welcome. His expression shifts the moment he gets a proper look at Denise. His eyes go wide with surprise. He mutters under his breath that something feels off about this visit. Jason's face carries the tired patience of a man who has answered the same question too many times. He tells Denise that he does not know where Derek is either, and that 3 teams have already come and gone this morning alone. He adds that there is nothing more he can tell her. Denise does not miss a beat and asks if Dressed Wolftail was here. She clarifies that she means the old mage. Jason's composure cracks instantly and his eyes go wide as he stammers out a response. Denise smiles warmly and thanks him for the answer. She turns to Bella and announces that they are leaving because she needs to check the carriage transit records. Bella nods and follows close behind. In the Ebelstein commercial district, they arrive at the Coachman's Guild. Bella asks how Denise knows that Sir Drest visited. Denise leans back with the confidence of someone who has already won. She explains that it is so obvious and points out that the mercenary left a 5-star mage's mansion of his own accord. She continues and notes that Derek is so serious about magic that he abandoned a 5-star household. That means only a 6-star could pique his interest. Denise adds that she also happened to hear that a 6-star mage was coming to Ebelstein, so she simply took a shot in the dark. A sly grin crosses her face as she notes that the old man at the tavern fell for it beautifully. She pauses and wonders aloud if it could be that she is actually something special. Her eyes sparkle as she asks whether she might actually be smart. Bella fires back without hesitation and points out that Denise never really uses her brain, so she is not sure. Denise giggles and tells Bella she is so witty. Bella shifts to a more serious tone and asks whether they will even be able to recruit Derek if they find him. She notes that she heard the great Duplain and Belmard are both after him. Denise waves away the concern with a confident smile and tells Bella that recruiting him is the easiest part. She reveals that she already has a plan. A honey trap. She explains that Derek is a hot-blooded young man and that rejecting beauty like hers is simply impossible. Bella's smile fades as she starts to point out that the competition is Lady A's, but Denise cuts her off with a confused look. Her confidence wavers as she presses Bella and insists she is prettier. She repeats the question until Bella responds. Denise's attention snaps to something in front of her, and she announces that she has found it. The transit record points to our boy. It describes a boy in a robe carrying a travel pass roughly a week ago. The record confirms the details. It was about a week ago, and the passenger matches the description of a boy in a robe with a travel pass. In the outskirts of Ronowell Hill lies the Laspa Great Cave. Deep inside the cave, blue light shimmers off the water as 2 figures train in the darkness. Their energy ripples through the underground chamber. Dressed pauses and notes that someone has come. He senses they are from House Veltus. He tells Derek that the visitors look like they are here for him and instructs him to go meet them. Fear tightens Bella's voice as she stammers that she thinks they should not go any further. She suggests returning to the estate and coming back with soldiers. Denise shakes her head and tells Bella flatly that she cannot do that. She explains that she would not be able to take credit if they bring soldiers. Her eyes sharpen as she lays out her reasoning. She warns that if they move soldiers, then another house could catch wind of it, and all their work would just hand the credit to someone else. Bella screams and points into the darkness, crying out that something is over there. Red eyes glow in the black of the cave, and Bella cries out that it is a monster. Denise's expression hardens as she steps in front of Bella and orders her to stay behind. She questions whether this area was supposed to be completely cleared and notes that something has made it in here regardless. She cannot simply walk away. Our boy emerges from the depths of the cave and his red eyes catch the faint light as he takes in the unexpected visitors with clear surprise. Derek asks what brings them to such a humble place and addresses her by name. He calls her Lady Denise. Denise stares back and murmurs in recognition that he is the mercenary. The blue glow of the cave illuminates the distance between them as both sides take measure of each other. A calm and determined smile settles on Denise's lips as she tells herself that now it is time to make him hers. Inside the dark cave, Denise approaches Derek with Bella close behind. She asks nervously if he is Derek, and he confirms without hesitation that she is correct. Relief washes over her face, and she tells Derek that she came here because she truly wanted to meet him. Her eyes soften as she explains that she wanted to have a conversation with him even if only once. She clasps her hands and declares with exaggerated warmth that this is indeed a most pleasant conversation. Denise curtsies slightly and composes herself for what comes next. She tells Derek that there is something she has been meaning to say. Her voice takes on a dreamy tone as she says she cannot even tell him how many times she has seen him in her dreams. She adds that she heard he is quite excellent as a mage and as an instructor. She says that if she could be taught by him specifically and by Derek himself. Denise finishes with a dramatic sigh and declares that she thinks she would be so happy. Our boy cuts through the performance without blinking. He asks why she is speaking in such a theatrical tone and whether she is practicing for a play. He notes that the cave echoes. Denise freezes inside because she realizes that her beauty and charm approach is not working on him at all. She steels herself and decides to pivot. Denise's voice drops the act entirely, and genuine emotion breaks through. She confesses that she cannot stop thinking about the duel between Lady Aisling and Lady Alente. As one of the Rosea trio, she admits she feels like the only one falling behind. Her composure cracks further as she admits she was anxious that she would eventually be left behind entirely. She worries that everyone else would keep growing while she stays in the same place. Denise throws herself into a dramatic plea and cries out that she is a desperate and pitiful beauty. She begs Derek to please save her. Her confidence surges internally as she thinks to herself that Derek must be close to breaking. She reasons that her heartfelt plea must be stirring him, and surely he will not be able to refuse. The young man simply responds that he is not so sure. He tells Denise plainly that from what he has observed, she does not seem to have much interest in magic at all. Our boy notes that her warm smiles and eagerness do not match someone who is genuinely devoted to magic training. He questions whether she truly came here for herself. Denise falls completely silent because she is unable to respond. Derek continues his assessment of the magic she uses to fight the monster. He tells her it was clumsy and very clumsy. The mana flow and the speed of the incantation are not properly prepared at all. He adds that her basic mana capacity is excellent but completely disorganized, and that shows how little she usually practices magic. His tone softens just slightly as he tells her he will give her one piece of advice. The guy's eyes lock on hers, and he warns that in front of someone who is serious about magic, she should never speak of sincerity with lies. He adds that some people would take that as an insult. Derek turns away and tells her to find someone more capable than a lowly mercenary like him. He adds that such a person would be more fitting for a lady of her standing. Denise stands frozen, and her blue eyes are wide and glassy as the weight of the rejection settles over her. The sun sets behind distant mountains and paints the sky in warm orange light. Denise walks away and her mind races. She tells herself she has figured out his true identity. She almost declares that he must be impotent, and then catches herself immediately. She insists, no, he is just an upright person. But she cannot help pointing out that a naturally beautiful woman like herself with no cosmetics needed just got rejected. She finds no logic in it. Bella gently suggests that Denise calm down and think about how to proceed. Denise whips around and asks why she needs to calm down. Denise insists she is not angry over something like this. She is not angry at all, she repeats. Her fury gives way to something quieter, and she admits that it is just that she is starting to feel competitive. Night falls as Denise sits huddled under a makeshift shelter near a campfire with her arms wrapped around her knees. Bella asks nervously if Denise is really going to be okay. She tells Bella that if she backs down now, another house will snatch Derek away. She insists she wants to win him over as soon as possible. Bella tells Denise not to push herself too hard and says she will be going home for the night. Denise calls out after her softly. Her expression turns genuinely tender as she admits she knows Bella suffers because she is always so selfish. She says this is such an important favor that she really cannot do it without Bella's help. The next day arrives with morning light breaking over the hillside. Denise approaches the cave entrance in the morning light carrying something and lets out a startled yelp. A crate of supplies sits before her, including bread and potions and scrolls and magic crystals packed neatly inside. She lets out a relieved sigh. Our boy asks what all of this is, and Denise smiles and tells him it is nothing much. Denise explains with a warm smile that there is not much she can do, but she will assist him so that he can focus on his magic training. The young man tells her flatly that doing this will not change anything. Denise does not waver for even a moment and says that is okay. She tells him not to mind her and adds that she feels like she is drowning just by watching him train. Internally, Denise reasons through her long game strategy. She tells herself that if he is human, he will eventually feel somewhat grateful after receiving so much help. All she will need is the smallest opening to make her move. Derek accepts the supplies in the end but repeats firmly that he still will not be her teacher. Denise notes quietly to herself that he is stubborn to the last, but that it is only a matter of time. Denise snaps in frustration and calls Derek a selfish exploiter. She rants that she is being treated like a personal delivery girl. Bella interrupts with urgent news and says the head butler of House Duplain is approaching. Her eyes go wide as she tells Bella they need to hide immediately. Bella asks what they should do about the food, and Denise blinks and echoes the question back. A pair of polished shoes steps onto the forest path, followed by the measured stride of someone accustomed to authority. The full Duplain delegation comes into view with Dylan, the head butler, at the center. He is flanked by maids and armored guards in formation. Denise watches from her hiding spot, and her jaw nearly drops as she wonders aloud whether they are going to war. Inside the cave, Dylan stands before Derek and delivers the offer on behalf of House Duplain. The young man responds without hesitation and accepts. He says that to become Lady Azeline's magic instructor would be an honor. Denise's composure shatters completely as she screams in disbelief. Her face twists into pure outrage while Bella stares in equal shock beside her. Dylan nods and asks if Derek will be willing to leave with them immediately. Our boy answers flatly and says no. He explains that he will only go after he finishes his current training. He adds that he is not sure when that training will be complete. Dylan processes the unexpected answer in silence, and his expression tightens behind his monocle. The tension in the cave lingers as neither side gives ground. He tries a different angle and asks what would happen if he increases the payment. Derek's expression stays completely unchanged as he tells Dylan he is sorry. The young man explains his reasoning with quiet sincerity. At his current level, he cannot be of much help to Lady Azeline, and he does not wish to teach magic half-heartedly. The story shifts to the Duplain residence in Ebelstein. Azeline reacts with surprise and asks if they really found where Derek is. Her attendant confirms it and explains that the head butler went to see Derek personally the previous evening. Azeline's frustration shows immediately as she insists they should have told her sooner because she wanted to go ask him herself. The attendant warns that the terrain outside the Abelstein residence is very rough and difficult to reach. Azeline brushes the concern aside. She declares that this is about welcoming her teacher and that the conditions do not matter. Her voice rings with determination as she announces that the student should go in person. Night falls over the hillside near Lospa Great Cave, and the campfire crackles beside the makeshift shelter where Denise sits with Bella. Denise breaks the silence and tells Bella they are heading back tomorrow morning. Bella remarks quietly that Denise certainly gives up easily, and Denise responds dryly that it is because she is smart. She pauses and then asks Bella directly whether she actually thinks Denise is a fool. Bella's composure shatters as she stammers out a denial and insists she would never think such a thing. Denise's voice softens as something shifts inside her. She explains that she used to always acknowledge her own stubbornness before, but this time she admits she does not even want to be stubborn anymore. She murmurs that she has no idea why she feels so drained. Bella speaks up carefully and observes that the mercenary mage is not someone who can be moved by a person's background or money. She continues and notes that Derek seems to operate based on a much more important value that neither of them fully understands. Silence settles between them as Derek's words echo in Denise's mind. She recalls his exact words. He says that at his current level, he cannot be of much help to Lady Aislinn, and that he does not wish to teach magic half-heartedly. Denise stares up at the moonlit sky above the campfire, and her expression crumbles. She whispers to herself and asks why everyone around her is so sincere. The weight of the question sits heavily on her as the fire burns low beside her. Inside the cave, rocks scatter across the wet floor as the sound of magic training echoes through the chambers. Energy swirls around Derek as he trains alone in the cavern, and his focus is absolute. A loud impact breaks his concentration, and Denise appears at the cave entrance. She apologizes softly and says she is sorry for interrupting his training. Denise asks quietly if she can sit next to him, and Derek does not respond immediately. After a beat, he tells her she looks a bit different today. She tilts her head and asks if it is because she is dressed more casually. The guy shakes his head slightly and tells her it is not her clothes, it is her eyes. Denise's blue eyes are stripped of every pretense and look directly at Derek. She apologizes for being a nuisance all this time and tells him she is going to stop now. She thanks him for everything and tells him she hopes he finds a good teacher. Then something in her snaps and she mutters that teachers can go to hell. She declares flatly that she hates magic. Her voice drops all charm as she admits that everything was politics and acting. She only tried to keep Derek on the Veltus side because he became famous, but he is way too proud for it to work. She adds that since he will go to Aislinn anyway, she figures she should just step out of the way. Derek asks her a simple question and wants to know why she hates magic. Denise hesitates and starts to say she used to like it a bit in the past. Then she catches herself and admits that is not true either. She confesses quietly that she just liked being praised. She tells him she is jealous of someone like him who never questions the purpose of his own work. The silence between them stretches thin as the cave air stills around them. Denise grips the fabric of her skirt and asks Derek one last thing. She asks whether he will become a great mage. The young man stares back at her with red eyes but says nothing. At the Veltus Grand Duchy inside the Veltus mansion, Denise receives unexpected news. She asks in disbelief whether even Aslan gets rejected. The conversation continues as Denise processes what she has learned about the situation. Her attendant confirms it and notes that Derek is an unpredictable person by nature. Denise's expression shifts as she reasons aloud that his training simply is not finished yet. She notes quietly that this is different from a real rejection. A maid at the mansion tells Denise she should stop worrying about the matter. She comments lightly that Drest is the only one in the world capable of teaching that type of magic, and there is nothing they can do about the timing. The maid adds that a guest has arrived and is waiting to have a meal with her. Denise looks up with curiosity and asks who the guest is. Footsteps echo through the grand hall of the Veltus mansion as a figure approaches. A silver-haired young figure in dark formal attire steps into the dining hall and greets someone as father with a quiet good morning. Denise stares at the arrival in confusion because she is clearly not expecting this visitor. Denise and Bella stand frozen as Denise lets out a bewildered reaction. She is unable to process who just steps through the door. Grand Duke Veltus remarks that thanks to Denise, a precious magic talent now stands on his own feet. Denise thanks her father, and Derek humbly responds that he only did what he had to do. He shifts the topic and notes that Derek must have a reason for rejecting Duplin's request. His eyes crinkle with a generous smile as he offers to assist Derek as much as he can. Derek explains that he does not need anything beyond the reward he already mentioned. He adds that he only accepted because of Lady Denise's attitude. Grand Duke Veltus nods eagerly and praises Denise's attitude as wonderful. He boasts that no other lady compares to their Denise and insists anyone in Veltus territory would leap at the chance to teach her. Denise announces that they need to discuss the lessons now and insists it be just between her and the instructor. Denise finds Derek and demands to know what he is doing here. Our boy responds without missing a beat that he is drinking tea. Irritation flickers across Denise's face as she asks if he is joking. Derek blinks and asks what she means. Denise fires back and reminds Derek that he said he did not need her. She insists they already had a clean break. Denise explains she was grateful for what happened at Laspa Great Cave and received great help thanks to him. The young man cuts in and reminds her that he already told her it was just a political approach. Her composure finally cracks as she insists she has no interest in learning magic. She admits it does not feel right, and not without even properly knowing what magic is. Derek locks his gaze on Denise and points out that is exactly her problem. Denise falls silent with her arms crossed. She stares at Derek with a conflicted expression that says more than any words could. Resignation settles into Denise's voice as she admits it must have been frustrating for someone like him. She adds that what she dislikes and calls it a pity. Derek responds that without knowing a single thing about that beautiful and brilliant magic, she holds nothing but disillusionment and antipathy toward it. His eyes burn red with intensity, and he declares that he will not tolerate this. Denise freezes, and a faint gasp slips from her lips as Derek's anger hits her full force. She admits she should not have provoked him. In the Ebelstein Noble District, Iselin sits alone in a darkened room silhouetted against the tall windows. The perfectly composed Lady Iselin does not move a single step from where she stands. Her eyes grow distant as she reflects that the standard was what she always believed to be everything. Deep sadness weighs on Iselin as she realizes the truth. She was simply not free. Daisy calls out to her, and Iselin snaps back to the present. She tells Daisy to come in. Gentle concern fills Daisy's tone as she reports that a letter has arrived from the main house. Iselin wonders what kind of letter it is. Daisy explains that young Master Valerian's departure ceremony is next week. A spark of purpose returns to Iselin's eyes, and she notes it is his first departure ceremony. She decides to prepare a good gift at the shopping district. Iselin rises from her chair, and her decision is already made. The chair Iselin left behind lies overturned on the floor alone in the empty room, bathed in pale window light. A heavy stillness hangs over the Ebelstein Noble District as night falls on Denise's mansion. Denise rants to Bella that the guy is truly out of his mind. She says he was glaring with his eyes wide open, insisting she does not know a single thing about magic. Bitter frustration spills across her face as she demands to know why he forces magic on others when it is only good for him. Bella does not say a single word in response. Amusement flickers across Bella's face as she perks up. She wonders if this means Denise will stop forcing those boring books on her from now on. Denise mimics Derek's voice dramatically and repeats his words that she does not know a single good thing about this beautiful and brilliant magic. She throws her hands up and copies his declaration that he will not tolerate it. Bella smiles and compares the two of them, saying, like teacher, like student. Denise sighs and mutters that she does not find those novels interesting either. Dread settles over Denise as she explains the real problem. If she brings in a teacher who solved Diela's issues and earned Ilente's trust and even turned Iselin away, then the pressure on her will be enormous. Bella closes her eyes with a gentle smile and tells Denise to please go to sleep. She urges Denise to just listen to her for once. Worry gnaws at Denise as she admits that if she fails to achieve anything under such a teacher, it will make her look completely incompetent. Desperation creeps into her voice as she wonders if she can just fire him using her own authority. She whines that all she wants is to lie down and read her novels in peace. Bella points out that if Denise fires Derek, the allowance from the 3 houses will be cut off. Denise goes silent, and Bella bids her goodnight and takes her leave. The moment the door closes, Denise buries her face in her pillow and screams in frustration. In a flashback dressed, sits with Derek and advises him that it would be wise to maintain good relations with the 3 major noble houses. He adds that there is no need to show loyalty to any side. He continues and tells Derek to walk the tightrope between the 3 houses and keep them anxious. Steady conviction fills his eyes as he tells him that only then will he be able to look after himself. Derek takes in every word without a sound. A grand building stands under a bright morning sky in the Noble District. Inside, Denise lies fast asleep and snoring without a care in the world. Sheer terror jolts through Denise as a deafening bang tears through the room. Our boy stands over her and smashes a frying pan to produce the loudest wake-up call imaginable. Denise screams at the top of her lungs. She bolts upright and shrieks, demanding to know if he is crazy. Our boy responds calmly that he is not crazy. He explains that the sun is already high and she refused to wake up, so he had to resort to a loud sound. Panic floods her face as she snaps that he is missing the point entirely. She reminds him that she is still in her pajamas. The young man glances at her and states plainly that he can see that. He instructs her to change and come out within 5 minutes. Denise storms toward the door and yells that there is a limit to being rude even for someone like Derek. She protests that today is the weekend and insists it is common sense to rest on weekends. Derek nods and agrees that she is correct. Calm composure settles over the guy as the two sit across from each other at a table with tea. He asks why she is making such a fuss in the morning. He points out that not overdoing it is very different from failing to maintain the basics. Derek explains that as a member of the Great Rosa Trio, it is only natural to maintain a minimum level of refinement, even on weekends. Denise fires back that he is the one deciding what counts as natural. She reminds him that as his employer, she does not agree. A sly confidence settles over our boy as he slides a document across the table. Denise stares at it in confusion. Derek reveals that this is the contract written by Grand Duke Veltus himself. He clarifies that his employer is Grand Duke Veltus and not Denise. The Grand Duke has delegated all authority regarding magic achievement to him. Denise's jaw drops and she stammers that she never heard about any of this. Without missing a beat, the young man shifts to explaining the day's schedule. He announces that after a light breakfast, they will first assess her current level of search-type magic. Derek continues and says afterward she will relearn combat-type elemental magic from the basics. He adds that the afternoon will cover physical training followed by mana utilization. Denise cries out for him to wait. She protests that he just said they would not overdo it because it is the weekend. Our boy pauses for a beat and confirms that she is correct. Then he adds with a perfectly straight face that maintaining the basics is a difficult task. Rage and disbelief twist across Denise's face as she calls him a crazy man. Denise runs through the grounds during training, gasping for air and barely keeping her legs moving. Denise collapses forward and screams for Bella to come help her. She arrives and pumps her fists with pure excitement at the sight of Denise actually training. Denise stares at her in utter betrayal. Night falls over the mansion and the moon hangs high above the rooftops. Denise sprawls across her bathtub and groans to Bella that she is going to die. She declares that the mercenary can go straight to hell. Deadpan warmth fills Bella's voice as she notes that the responsibility for that is unclear, so Denise might not be able to send him to hell. Bitter frustration wells up in Denise's eyes as she accuses Bella of being just like him. She declares that Bella has no blood or tears left. Bella responds without blinking that without blood and tears a human dies. Denise wails that the contract Grand Duke Veltus signed makes it impossible to fight back. Bella's tone turns thoughtful as she suggests that Denise try telling the Grand Duke directly and ask him to fire Derek. Denise's eyes light up from the bath as a plan forms. She proposes they tell the Grand Duke that Derek has no skill and is really lazy. She begs Bella to back her up. Bella refuses without a moment of hesitation. She reminds Denise that she knows she cannot actually do it. He is the instructor Denise brought in herself, and he is a talent that other houses are desperate to have. Denise goes quiet and murmurs that Bella is right. Resignation crosses Denise's face as she admits her father might be flexible about other things, but he never compromises when it comes to the house's honor. She sinks deeper into the bath and accepts that there is no way out of this arrangement. Denise finally reaches for her novel and sighs that she can at last read in peace. Bella suggests she should probably just rest instead. Denise refuses and insists that if she gives in once it is over, then the guy's voice cuts through the door asking if she is coming out now. Denise freezes mid-page and her novel slips from her fingers. She spins around and screams that he scared her half to death. Though awe flashes through her eyes as she demands to know what Derek is doing here. She thought he had gone home. Denise begs him not to say there is more training left. Derek calmly responds and asks what nonsense she is talking about. The young man explains he is here to discuss tomorrow's training schedule. Denise covers her ears and shouts that she cannot hear him. She screams for the guards to remove this strange person from the mansion. The mansion stands quiet under the sun sky. Denise moans to Bella that it has been 3 years since the nightmare began. Bella corrects her gently and notes that it has been 3 days. Denise stares at Bella in disbelief and whispers that she is a liar. She brushes Denise's hair and mentions that since she is attending the Rosé Salon meeting today, there will be no training. Her face lights up as she realizes today is the meeting day. Denise urges Bella to hurry before that crazy man shows up. She insists there is nothing to worry about since she has a meeting to attend. Then Derek appears behind her and greets her with a polite good morning. Denise nearly jumps out of her skin and screams that he scared her. Raw panic floods her face as Derek begins explaining the day's lesson on basic physical strength and theory. She cuts him off and shouts that today is her meeting day. She demands to know if he understands how important social activities are. Derek calmly replies that he is aware. He will wait at the mansion until the meeting is over. She adds that the Rosea Salon and social circles are important for her education after all. The young man tells her to please take her time. Denise's mind races as she wonders why he is actually letting her go. She suspects he knows that social circles will help discipline her on their own. Our boy watches Denise rush off with Bella and his red eyes gleam with quiet calculation. Denise shouts back that even those annoying meetings can be helpful sometimes. Derek stands alone in the hallway, and his crimson gaze lingers on the direction Denise disappeared. Something is turning behind those red eyes. A carriage rumbles down a country road, and its wheels kick up dust under the afternoon sun. Bella observes that Denise was so energetic during the Rosea Salon meeting, but now she looks like someone about to die on the way home. Dread fills Denise's voice as she mutters that the reason is obvious. Derek is waiting at home. She grumbles under her breath and calls him a devil and a brute. Denise announces that she is going to flip the carriage with magic. She will disguise it as a carriage accident to skip training. Blue mana sparks to life in Denise's palm as she prepares to cast. She grins and asks Bella whether she is a genius or not. The carriage pulls up to the mansion gates and wheels clatter to a halt. Denise squints across the garden and wonders why Derek is chatting so happily with the gardener, Mr. Feb. Our boy greets Denise casually and instructs her to head to the study immediately. He tells her she will be reading theory books this evening. Denise blinks in confusion and wonders why he is not sticking to her and tormenting her today. Suspicion creeps into Denise's expression as she peers through a window. She mutters that he seems to be slacking off, which is unusual. Denise peeks into the kitchen and finds Derek chatting cheerfully with the chef. Her jaw drops in disbelief. Shock hits she full force as she gasps even louder. Denise narrows her eyes and mutters that this is suspicious and deeply suspicious. Something catches her attention and she reacts with a startled gasp. Irritation creeps into her tone as she tells Bella she is talking about Derek. She explains that lately he has been chatting up the servants quite a lot. She warns Bella that she does not know what the young man is plotting, but Bella must never fall for it. Denise grips Bella's hands and asks if she is the one person who will not be swayed. Bella reassures her not to worry. Warmth fills her smile as she promises she likes being by Denise's side more than anything. Denise lets out a piercing scream and cries out Bella's name in pure horror as she discovers the worst. She storms up to Derek and demands to know what on earth he is up to. Fury erupts from Denise as she declares that this mansion is her mansion and all the people here are her people. The guy calmly replies that he does not understand why she is so nervous. Denise snaps that she knows he is trying to win over her servants and orders him to stop scheming and just teach her magic. Derek admits that it is true he has been getting closer to the servants. He insists he is not scheming anything. Anxiety flickers through her eyes as she demands to know what he plans to do by getting close to them. She confesses it is making her anxious. Our boy explains that he needs to know more about her. Not the elegant lady of the mansion, but the real Denise. Derek continues and says teaching someone is not just about presenting knowledge. The more he knows about the person receiving the lesson, the better he can provide training for them. Vulnerability breaks through Denise's guard as she stammers and presses to know what they all said about her. She wonders if they said she is prettier than Iseline or Alente. The young man shares what the servants told him. He mentions that they said she hates studying and lacks motivation. Denise goes silent and her expression tightens. Derek adds that he also heard she takes the lead more than anyone when it comes to important matters. He continues and says, although she acts indifferent, she actually takes very good care of the servants. One servant told Derek they might get in trouble for saying it, but Denise is just like their own daughter. Tenderness softens Derek's voice as he relays another account. A servant admitted that Denise's mood for magic practice can be rough. Some days she grumbles all morning, but the next day she orders medicine and supplies for everyone. Another servant shared that not long ago a fellow worker fell very ill, and Denise dropped everything and sent them plenty of medicine. Bella added that they would give their life to protect her. She even nursed them all night when they were sick. Denise turns her face away and mutters that she was just doing her job and nothing more. Our boy's red eyes catch the fading sunlight as he pauses and adds one more thing. Derek mentions that he also heard she is a talented writer. Panic seizes Denise as she stammers and asks what he means by writing. She insists she does not know anything about that. The guy states that she is writing a novel called The Aristocratic Romance, is she not? He notes that he enjoyed reading it as well. And he adds that he particularly related to Tracy's past. However, he felt Sir Robin was a bit excessive. Denise nearly chokes as she demands to know who else is aware of her novel. She shrieks about why Derek is even reading it. Derek continues his critique and notes that past romantic feelings are one thing, but the pages dedicated to describing Sir Robin's masculinity were quite bold. He observes that the vividness of those descriptions was startling. Mortification explodes across her face, and she lets out an ear-splitting scream. Denise bolts from the farm. The young man watches her go with his crimson gaze and reflects that he was not lying. The need to know his student is only natural. Derek adds quietly to himself along with her greatest strengths. He lets those words hang in the evening air as Denise disappears inside. The next morning, Derek greets Denise with a calm good morning, and Denise acknowledges him by name. Our boy wonders if she did some writing last night as well. He reminds her that it is better to sleep at night. Alarm flashes across Denise's face as she asks what he means by writing. Derek clarifies he is talking about the assignment he mentioned yesterday. Derek wonders aloud if she forgot already. Denise leaps to her feet and shouts that she must be dreaming. She declares she needs to train her magic right this instant. Our boy watches her rush off and his red eyes gleam with quiet satisfaction. At a grand parlor in the noble district, Alente sips her tea and remarks that it has already been about 10 days since Denise brought in the magic instructor. She inquires how things are going and whether Denise is adjusted. Denise sighs and admits that if hell exists, this might be it. Alente notes that she must be having a rough time. She sets down her cup and inquires whether Denise has heard the news. Denise tilts her head and wonders what news Alente is talking about. Alente reveals that Lady Diela's debutante will be held soon. She adds that Diela will be attending the next routine Rosea Salon meeting alongside Lady Iseling. Denise's brow furrows as she repeats the name in disbelief. The good-for-nothing Lady Diela. At the Grand Duchy of Duplain, inside the Duplain mansion, Diela scoffs and asks why she would go to the Rosea Salon. A servant informs Diela that she will be attending next week's meeting as part of the preparation for her debutante. Diela considers this for a moment and lets out a quiet hum. She shrugs and agrees to give it a try. A sharp glint enters Diela's eyes as she adds that there is someone she wants to see anyway. The girl's name is Denise.